Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicki, and I am joined with my co-host Lou Cominelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Good evening, Lou.
What's up, Matt? How are you?
I'm well. Doing great. Had a busy day today. Jamming things out, and apparently I can't even remember the last time I did it, but I had to renew my license, my driver's license, and what a process that is. So I thought it'd be easy. You just submit the thing, because I think once upon a time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I did something online and boom, it came in the mail, and nope, they needed an eye exam. I've never had an eye exam other than the, cover one eye. Can you read the bottom line? You make something up, and I don't think they even check, but somehow I passed. But yeah, so I had to deal with the DMV, a doctor, you name it. It was a busy day.
Usually we say this stuff at the end. So if you want to find us, Fire from Two Windows on Instagram, all letters, all spelled out. Fire from Two Windows at Gmail. If you want comments, questions, tell us we suck, tell us we're good, whatever you want to tell us. This is how we get guests to come on, like we have tonight. We've answered some questions. I've actually used it to reach out for some research we've done at the fire department here. So I try to post as much as I can. Sometimes my schedule now with what's going on, it's not as much as it should be, because I'm focusing on a new thing I got going on, which my wife isn't too happy about, which is coaching modified wrestling at the school. So
how's that going?
Just one more thing. The team had a come to Jesus speech today.
So the other day, one of the guys, somebody did a FaceTime group message something, because one of our members was having an event going on, and I answered it, and I didn't realize what was happening. Okay. And talking to them, and then your face pops up. You said, "I'm at practice," and then you hung up. I saw a gymnasium ceiling. You're covered in sweat. I take it this was that?
Yeah, I was at wrestling practice that day.
Why are you wrestling?
Why not?
Are you taking down little kids? Like, oh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Are you wrestling these kids? Like, hey, kid, I'm going to show you something.
Yeah, you have to.
This is how you do it. You shoot for the legs. There's kids out there not being able to walk to class today.
I'm going to say this because I know they're not listening to this. There is something to say about the standards of schools these days, that I just had this discussion with my wife, that they're 7th and 8th graders, so that would make 12, 13, maybe 14 on the older end, that they don't know how to do somersaults and backwards rolls.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that was part of our curriculum either, but.
Yeah, it was part of the presidential physical standards test that they used to have when Bush won and Clinton and was in there.
Okay. I don't remember any of that.
I looked at, so the other coach is the gym teacher at the middle school, and I looked at him and I said, "Is this serious?" He goes, "Man, if we can get him just do a push-up, I'd be happy." So it's a different world we live in now, and it's kind of ties into the podcast we just did the other day about generational gaps and stuff like that. We got kids at gym classes. I don't even know what they're doing in gym, but that's a topic for another day.
That's all right. But we can play right off the school thing, because I was thinking about something that came up. So like we said, the Fire from Two Windows at gmail.com, or the Instagram handle is where you can reach out to us, send us something, comments, likes, whatever. Dislikes. We like disgruntled people as well, because that if everybody's on the same playing field, or always agreeing rather, then they might not be on the same playing field. How about that? And sometimes you have to have a disagreement so that you understand. But through the email, we received, actually, I think it was through the email, we received a book from somebody that listens to us and said, okay, let's take a look. Well, I read that book all through the night. And then the next morning I got up and I kind of briefed through it again. It was all about leadership. And I approached this, it's funny because this was about leadership in a very modern sense. This is the first time I've seen one that I've read where you take all these great ideas, you look at all the textbooks, they kind of repeat themselves a little bit, and it's not a terrible thing. It's good to get new inferences about it, but this one was put together from a fresh officer's point of view. It was very, very refreshing. Mixed and tying in with the school thing, I had a teacher in my high school that I think about all the time. Um, he made us read books and regurgitate them in a way that, like, Shakespeare was one of them. I hated Shakespeare. He knew we hated Shakespeare, but line by line, he would read a bit, and then you would discuss that bit, and then you move on to the next bit, and you just, chunks at a time throughout the semester. And it eventually got you expand your lexicon, looking a little bit further deeper into the text than just what was on the page. Novels is a whole different thing, but this book was really captivating because you could read this as a high-end officer, higher echelon officer, or you could read it as a black hat looking to become an officer. And there's material in here that's applicable all the way around. Everybody's reading the same words. You're getting a little bit different take on it. I thought this was fascinating. So I'd like to share a little bit with you to start this off. You always want to be fair, but not everyone is equal. Every day, we're required to hold a roll call meeting in the kitchen. The crew is allowed to grab some coffee, meet with the outgoing crew that they're relieving, or even follow up on some equipment issues. But for the most part, they know to start their day by reporting to the kitchen after the meeting is called over the PA. On one crew I was part of, we had an engineer who just got made, and I noticed every morning he had liked to start his day with a bowl of oatmeal. Most every morning, he knew to get his breakfast going before the meeting and was ready at the table with the rest of the crew. If there was ever a problem with his truck and got pulled away, he would skip the oatmeal and wait until the end of the meeting. But if he had to deal with the truck issue that was quick and was in the kitchen microwaving his oatmeal, and we sat down in the meeting, I was comfortable letting him wait 1 minute to just finish up his morning routine and join us when he was done. He was in the room and could hear and participate, but was allowed this courtesy because over 15 years on, he had a track record of hard work and being a team player. I never minded because he is always very professional and someone we can count on. Plus, with him driving to the fire, our getting safely to the scene with reliable water in his hands, it's in our interest to provide him with a comfortable work environment. For him, this meant oatmeal with green apples every morning. I found that being fair but flexible with assignments and duties creates a dynamic and positive work environment that significantly boosts employees' motivations and engagements. When workers see that their hard work is recognized and rewarded, it fosters a strong sense of purpose and commitment to their career. This recognition can be particularly crucial for junior firefighters who often go through long periods of rigorous training and demanding tasks before they advance in their roles. The notion of having a light at the end of the tunnel not only encourages them to persist through each challenge, but it also instills a belief that their efforts will eventually lead to professional and personal growth. This perspective can be incredibly motivating as it helps them envision their future success and appreciate the journey they're on. It's essential, however, to maintain a standard of fairness in how assignments are distributed and how rules are applied. There's a risk involved in favoring certain individuals over others or creating an environment where young members feel overburdened while others receive preferential treatment. An equitable approach ensures that all team members feel valued and supported, reinforcing the team's unity and cooperative spirit. Moreover, offering perks and rewards for those who have proven themselves encourages a healthy, competitive spirit among team members. Such incentives can take various forms, from additional training opportunities and leadership roles to special projects. This approach promotes personal accountability and inspires everyone to work their utmost, knowing that their dedicated and hard work will lead to promotional opportunities with not only small pay raises, but also tangible benefits. This is common in the fire service. There's only so much money a city or state can afford to pay you, and there is no equity, partnership track, or stock options to incentivize people with multiple six-figure salaries. Sometimes the real life incentives, our benefits and job perks, are just as motivational. So that's a small excerpt from this book. The book title is called Leading Through Heat, and this is by now retired Captain Mark Andrew. So I would like to introduce Mark Andrew to the podcast. He's a retired captain. Let's see. Last I had was 27 years. I think a little bit further. He just recently retired on the job and has a wealth of knowledge and decided to put this stuff together. And as he phrased it at the beginning of his book, he's lucky to be able to compile all this stuff and get this out there. Something he's been thinking on for a very long time. Back in New Year's Eve of 2024, there was a big fire. It caught a lot of attention. We saw that nationally, even. And then just after that, we saw another part of this. So we go through our NIOSH reports. We see these problems. We see all these little things. But the interesting one of this story was that it was caused by arson. The arsonist was caught. Mark got out ahead of this thing and said, whoa, prison isn't the answer. He needs help. It was found that this person had a mental health issue. And Mark was a big proponent to trying to change the way things are being done within his city and in his community. In 2025, he ran for city council, and he's a father of two. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mark Andrew. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Matt and Lou, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm a fan of your podcast.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're not, but no, I'm just kidding. You have a great deal of history in your department in the fire community. I really like that you had a chance to put this book together. I really do. And I got to commend you on this. This thing was fantastic to read. I really do truly think that everybody can read this and pull something from it.
Well, thanks for that. It really means a lot coming from two guys that care about not only the fire service, but leadership and running a good crew and motivating the next generation to perform at their best. I got to thank the two of you guys for one other thing. And I'm also going to throw some thanks out to some of your colleagues out there in the Instagram, YouTube, and podcasting social media world. That is one of the better improvements the best improvement I've seen in the fire service in 30 years is the amount of information, discussions, message boards, specifically the videos of fires that we have now, has really opened up fire education to the common man. Whereas when I came on, all of fire education came from, if you're a chief in New York, you're a chief in LA, and maybe a chief in Philly, you were allowed to write articles for fire engineering. And we all watched these VHS cassettes of the same grainy, once in a generation video footage they would get of some warehouse or apartment in New York. Now with cell phones, almost every fire in America is recorded and somebody's going to post it somewhere. And so now we've got this incredible, vibrant community of fire professionals that care about the job. And we could break down video and talk tactics and strategy and bring that down to the common man.
Yeah, we've discussed this lightly on a couple podcasts that it's wild to see. I mean, all three of us have seen pre-internet, and we saw at the beginning of the stages of the internet, we had to learn these technologies, and as it grew, we had to keep up with it. Going to some of your book and what you started to allude to, working with the younger generations who just they pop out and they have a handle on this stuff, and they're just gonna be better at it than we ever were.
For sure.
However, being the early stages of the internet users, we understand when you throw something out there, people tend to attack because it's easier than it is to have a discussion. And when Lou and I decided to do this podcast, it was something I know I've been thinking about it. Lou, I believe you've been thinking about it, and we just came together and said, let's just start talking. I mean, we have great conversations at the kitchen table and, at the fire table. And that means that if we're having it, every small department, every large department's having similar, conversations, but those conversations aren't crossing over to each other. So we'd like to connect those dots because maybe we can learn from each other instead of tearing each other down. So we're doing the best we can there. And I agree with you. I think it's not just ours. There's a million of them out there. We're not the first ones to do it. We don't pioneer it and we don't claim to. Let's keep the conversations moving and flowing in an appropriate manner.
Yeah. And thankfully we are professional firefighters in the fire service because it develops a thick skin, which is needed when you start to read those comment sections. In a thinner skinned profession, these were occasional disagreements with tactics would turn into insults and hurt feelings. And I have really found that if somebody says, what are these guys going into this fire for? This is bad tactics. There'll be 10 people that'll post, well, here's another perspective and here's what we saw. And then you read these comment sections of a fire that's been posted, and then you start to see people come together. Even if there are disagreements, we're at least understanding each other. And following these pages and being on a couple of podcasts, I started compiling notes of what to talk to. And then I looked at the notes and said, I wonder if this could be an essay. And maybe I could finally, after 30 years, finally get published in Fire Engineering or Firehouse. And then I said, I kind of like these essays. Let me see if I could turn it into a chapter. And then once I had 2 or 3 down, I said, all right, I think I got something. And then I just kept punching at it. And before I knew it, I had a book.
That's amazing. So this book, when does it come out?
The publisher is eyeing December 22nd.
Okay, so coming up right
Yes.
before Christmas, just in time. Well, it might. Can you get it for Christmas? Is there any way to do that?
That's what I'm kind of waiting to see. Being a first-time author, I went through a hybrid publisher, so it's a little bit of a pay-to-play. Just a real quick behind the scenes of the publishing world. You can self-publish. I could just go to Ingram, which is the nation's largest bookseller, or Amazon Kindle, or I'm sorry, Barnes & Noble Kindle or Amazon. And then they've got upload functions. And then if you just pay them a fee, you can upload your Microsoft Word manuscript, but then you got to know how to format it. And then you got to pick the right font, and then the right indent size, and then the right margins, and then how big of a boldface do you want for each chapter, and do you want to insert photos, and how are you going to do your graphic arts? And so after you pay all of their fees, you're in for a couple of $1,000s, and that's if you're not getting professional consulting. So a lot of people will go through a hybrid publisher, which is still a little pay to play, but then they at least will do the formatting for me. And so I just kind of played around with it, my first time ever doing it. And I've been writing for years. I enjoy writing. I've just never successfully been published. It looks like it's going to be print on demand that you can just buy online, and they'll just print it when it's ordered. If there's enough sales, they'll print a bunch and ship them to bookstores. And then people could obviously just download the ebook to their Kindle or reader.
Okay, so it'll be available at least Amazon, and then Barnes & Noble, Nook?
I believe so. Yes, that is the plan.
Okay. So that, and then there will be a physical copy that you can download and print if you'd like as well.
Absolutely. And then they will just mail you a paperback or a hardcover copy to your house.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. That's going to be awesome. We really were humbled and honored to get what I've been calling an advanced copy here and taking a look at it. So I really appreciate that. So we'll make sure that we reach out and actually buy an official copy for our bookshelf at the station.
I certainly thank you for that, and I'm glad to know Jeff Bezos will be $1.50 richer.
All right, let's get started with. We like to do a little quick synopsis of what makes the man. So where did you grow up?
Right here in Dearborn. But I came up in the 90s when all the departments were still basic EMT, and it was a popular job. So to touch on what all 3 of you talked about a few episodes ago with Detroit firefighter Dave Nowacki, I think all 4 of us would agree. We came up in a time when you would go to a high school gymnasium that was just packed with 500 people. And this is night 2 of testing, and they might hire 2 people. It's just because the standards were usually just basic EMT and driver's license. And so it was very challenging to get on back then. And then I got on a part-time department, built up the resume. Dearborn called. I would have gone anywhere that hired me, but I do feel fortunate that my hometown is the city that did offer me a full-time job.
Gotcha. What was your childhood like?
My father also worked for Dearborn, and he did 32 years and was on the job when I hired on. So we had a chance on different shifts to be on the same department at the same time for about 6 months to a year before he retired. And so I got to learn a little bit about the department growing up as a child.
So, high school, how are grades?
I was a 2.5 average student.
Just wanted to go straight to being a firefighter. That was it. You knew early.
Yes, I did actually know I wanted to do this. So I knew at the time I had to go to basic EMT, and so I set myself up at a community college. I talked to a couple of fire chiefs when I was a senior in high school, and said, "Do you want Army, Air Force, or community college?" And I would have gone anywhere I was suggested, but the two fire chiefs I talked to both said community college, basic EMT. That's what we want, and so that
Fantastic.
was what I did.
How long
And
was that program?
I did the whole fire science thing, so that was, I want to say, 4 semesters, so 2 years, and then basic was 1 semester, and then I went and got a job at a private ambulance. Worked about 2 years, went back and got my paramedic, and then worked a couple of years, and then Dearborn called.
Okay, so I take it. So what you're alluding to here is that Dearborn has inside of Dearborn itself. So the fire department, they also have ambulances. Am I correct on
Yes.
that? Okay, you
Yep.
made it sound like that in the text, and I
Gotcha.
want to touch base on that. So that's not something our region we don't. New York State's mixed all the way across the board. You see it more in the volunteer departments. You'll have ambulances commingling like under one roof or
Right.
some sort of association with the fire department
or the smaller career departments.
or
I
the smaller
see.
career departments.
With us in Michigan, Detroit and Grand Rapids, I believe, are the only non-merged EMS departments we have in the entire state. If
But-
you're a full-time career.
But there's still like a BLS first response or an ALS first response on a
Correct.
fire truck.
So yeah, Detroit recently went MFR, upgraded that to basic. So all their new hires have to have basic EMT. And then your first couple of years, this is just in their last labor contract about a year ago. You're a dual role, so you'll split 50% of your time in an ambulance, 50% of time on an engine, and then after hopefully about 2 years to 3 years, you could be full-time fire, and then you just transfer to the fire division full-time, and that's your assignment the rest of your career.
Gotcha.
But the ambulance doesn't park in the fire bay; they have got a side bay for it, and but in all of the suburbs in southeastern Michigan, they're all dual role, paramedic, transporting, ambulance in the fire station with rotating crews. So with my department, the first 2 ranks rotate on the ambulance and the fire truck. Once you make engineer, that's when you're not on the ambulance anymore.
Okay. Something that we're not familiar with is having in the hierarchy of things like promotionals and stuff, we don't have a position that you promote up to engineer from firefighter.
Okay.
At least not yet. I don't know if it's in the future plans, but we don't have that. So for now, you get cleared on it. It's a long process now, and then you're eligible to drive that rig, if you will. But we try to rotate that crew, so it's not always the same 2 guys in the back seat, the same guy in the front seat. We rotate through so everybody gets the experience, because at a medium to small size department that we are, those people, for overtime reasons and everything, they could be assigned driver at the next station or on an overtime opportunity. So we kind of have to blend that together for the moment. The last thing I'm going to ask before we get back to, I got a couple more questions.
Real
Go
quick,
ahead.
you're not jumping fire. You're not jumping rigs, right?
No,
that was going to be my
our
question.
city does not. There are a couple very small suburbs not far from Dearborn. I guess a polite way to put it would be affluent, where the houses are all cul-de-sac, colonial McMansions with attached garages, all pretty new. You get a lot less accidental electrical fires and furnace fires because everything's so brand new and fire coded that these smaller cities might have a fire a year. And so for them, I've seen a few very, very small affluent suburbs that run 2 people per state in a station, and they would hop a rig.
Yeah, that's the norm. Like the departments around here in New York that staff the ambulance and fire trucks, they're jumping rigs. Like one of our transfers here, he came from a smaller department, and what would you say, 95% of the time he was on an ambulance, Matt? Because they're doing long distance transports and you wouldn't have a fire truck staffed.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you would have one
We'll say
guy on
that,
it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Most of the time you're on an ambulance, but you kinda come in setting up your stuff on a fire truck, but you're hopping across the app bay
Yeah, I would say
all day.
the Wayne County departments that surround Detroit, the population is enough to where all of those departments, even if they only have a 2-man ride, it's 4 people in a station, 2 on the engine, 2 on the ambulance. They find a way to rotate it the best they can. My department is considered one of the bigger departments in the state. Um, so we have 3-man engines, 3-man ladders, 2-man ambulances.
All right.
And the guys on the ambulance, or the members on the ambulance, they're responding to fires as firefighters.
Yep, they have gear and hand tools. They're part of the firebox alarm. We do 3 engines, a truck, a chief, and 2 ambulances to a box alarm.
So you're getting how many on scene on the first alarm?
17.
Okay.
Whereas most of the suburbs around us and in the west side of Detroit and the north side of Detroit don't even have 17 people working a day. So we're considered very lucky. We never, ever use mutual aid. We've got enough to staff 2 box alarms per day.
Oh, no. All right.
Yeah. So we're considered a bigger suburb, even though it's not as big as Detroit and Grand Rapids. We're of the suburbs, there's Dearborn, Warren, Lansing, I think Southfield is decently big, but they've taken some cuts. So we're considered a bigger suburb.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking. You guys are, personnel wise, you guys are like double the size of us, but population wise, you are 10 times the size of what we have here.
Yeah, we have 151 in the budget. I think right now they got 148. I don't know what's like in New York. It is very hard to hire people in Michigan. And it all goes back to, my God, just everything that Mike Rowe's been talking about for 5 years on his podcast.
Yeah.
Just not getting young men and women into the labor force as we were before. I would say the last 12 months has been a little bit better, but we're still not getting more than 3-4 applicants a year, whereas we were getting 700 before.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So when you were trying to get on, all right, through that process you're going through, prior to that, you had the high school experience and a college component there. So you're going through the fire science program. Were you playing any sports at the time?
I did. I just wasn't good at them. So while I was on the football team, I never saw the field, but I just enjoyed athletics. I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I enjoyed working out every day. But I didn't have a lot of talent for it. Also was on the wrestling team for 4 years, only made varsity my senior year and only won a couple of matches. But I just, once again, I love the camaraderie of it, even though I didn't excel at it. I liked being part of team sports. It was a fun thing for me.
Was it very regimented as far as the workouts and the workups, other than game time play and all that?
Yes, it really was. I did track in the spring, so that was the laid back one. You kind of just trained yourself. And but the wrestling and the football, yeah, I liked the organized working out. I did come to that conclusion later in life on the fire service. I would always work out, and then I tried some DVD workouts in the mid 2000s, and I kind of just liked them. And then I realized, wow, I really waste a lot of time in the gym. I could work so much harder. And then I just learned that I need that regimentation.
It's the old P90X.
I was going to say Tybo.
P90X.
It is the P90X. That is the one that got me to realize I'm not pushing myself hard enough. And that made a big change. Just taking fitness on as a hobby made a big change in my fire career.
For the better, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. So that probably assisted you. So I'm guessing like going through the academy and everything was.
Yes, because I had youth on my side. It wasn't hard.
What age was that?
That was probably at 20, I would say. I did 18 and 19 at the community college, went to and then the fire academy was at another community college. So, it's set up as a trade school. It's just sponsored by a community college. So I went to a trade school, community college-ish fire academy, and graduated with that. And then worked at a private ambulance for a while, got a job as a part-time firefighter somewhere else, and just slowly chipped away and built that resume over the course of years.
So in Michigan, do you have to put yourself through the fire academy to get on the?
Yes, you do. Outside of Detroit and Grand Rapids, they're the only two big cities that do traditional in-house fire academies, where you have 15 or 20 people, and that's your academy class. We don't have that here. You don't get an application unless you give them your paramedic license and your academy graduate certificate.
So is that full time?
Yes.
Like Monday through Friday type of thing?
Some academies do night classes, but a lot do the full-time 9 to 5 for a semester. And it's just 16 weeks of Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. And it's a grind, but it's worthwhile.
Are you hired based off of your scores in the fire academy?
When I was, yes. They looked at transcripts. They had a written exam. And then the physical agility was a pass or a fail. It's just earlier versions of CPATs. And yes, so it was absolutely score-based, maybe a little bit of an interview base. And it was super competitive. Right now, I think the written test is just pass or fail.
Can you go anywhere in the state that recognizes that academy?
Now you can. Before, I would say, once we got to like 2010, no cities were doing their own testing anymore. They just lumped into the CPAT and then found a county-wide exam that the students will just pay $50 to $100 to take, and then that's your scorecard you just take to every job you apply to.
But
because they divested from having to be their own tester.
Did the academy count towards your score towards a test?
It did not here because there was a written test after it. So it was more like a civil service exam.
Gotcha. Because so I was thinking it was like you were more similar to like how Florida runs it, where you invest, a couple $1,000s to go through their fire academy.
Yes, you do.
And based on how you score in the fire academy is based on your order that you get hired in. Because my buddy looked into it when he moved down there, and he's like, I can't give up.
We had a guy separate from us. Yeah, he is in the county department. This borders the north side of Tampa.
Yeah.
And he's in Hernando Beach, I think is the city he's assigned to, but it covers 10 cities. And yeah, he found out the hard way when he moved that while they had reciprocity, it's reciprocity after you jump through tons and tons and tons of hoops.
Oh, someone our Instagram account follows. She's a firefighter in PA, and she was kind of posting her stories about it, and the hoops that you jump through to get reciprocity in Florida is unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a 2-year process for this young man.
Yeah. But I guess you're a fireman in Florida.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is it snowing there?
There's snow on the ground, but it did not snow today.
Matt, how much snow did you get today?
I got none. It's so cold. I had to throw salt down to break up the ice in the driveway. Just so that I could shovel it. Yeah, we're in upstate. We're Western New York.
Matt lives a little farther west. He gets the Lake Erie lake effect snow, which is worse than the Lake Ontario lake effect snow. But right now, the way it's setting up is it's the snowfall this year for where we are is back like when we were growing up, how I remember like snowing on Thanksgiving. We haven't seen snow like this early in a long time.
Growing up, we always had snow. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the city, Rochester, so we didn't have a lot of snow days growing up, but it was like, it had to be 2 feet down on the ground before they're like, yeah, we'll think about closing school. We had a lot of snow.
The 2000-ish lawyers got involved in school districts. Man, they close all the time now.
But there's also not that much snow year to year anymore. Yeah, and all of a sudden it's shifting back, so I moved out towards the Buffalo way, and there it is. When I head home in the morning, it's clear skies. It shoots, you start heading a little south down into the town that I live in, and there's just this wall that goes all the way up. And I call it the white wall. As soon as you hit it, bam, it's 4 feet, 6 feet of snow. It's insane. It's
Lake
a lot
effect
of
is a
fun,
real
but
thing.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Lake effect snow. If people that are not around the Great Lakes, they don't know what snow is until they see lake effect snow.
Yes.
But this is the earliest I've gotten my snow blower out in quite some time.
I hear you.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't want to gloss over your firemanship too much. So I think that's an important part too. Cause again, what makes the man? So how long was from the time you got appointed until you got promoted to lieutenant?
I was 5 years per promotion. So I made firefighter 2 or senior firefighter in 5 years.
Okay.
And then engineer in 10, lieutenant in like 14 and a half. So just under 5, and then captain at 20.
Wow. Okay. So that first span all the way before you got to lieutenant.
Yep.
What was that like for you, and what was the evolution process? What'd you learn?
I learned a ton. And I talk in the foreword of the book about this. I don't share any animosity to examples of poor leadership I had when I hired on, because I ran into some great leaders, and I ran into some leaders who were good, but just weren't looking at the picture that I was looking at. And then I ran across some bad leadership. But they were just doing what they knew. They weren't taught any better. And if it wasn't for those lessons, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And so I am no way upset or angry or bitter going forward, but those first couple of years were really formative. In fact, me and a colleague of mine that I hired on with that same summer, we talked a lot about, by the time we had 6 to 8 months on, we both knew lieutenant was the gig. That was the thing. You're on an engine, you're a supervisor, but you're still sort of attached to the men. You're not a captain that's got a private room. We're a ladder-driven department. So our captains, if you have a ladder truck in your station, your captain's on the ladder, which means he goes on the least amount of calls, because our ladders are just doing medicals if nobody else is available, and then fires and rollovers. And so the call volume's a lot less. The job's a lot easier. And if you, and I love the discussion you guys have with Dave Nowacki. See, he talks a lot about this, and it mirrors what we saw in a suburban department. You got people that want to be leaders that are in it for the right reasons, but sometimes you've got people that are taking the job for the money. And he mentioned that we just know who they are. So when we show up on a box alarm, I'm going to have strong leadership on this assignment, but I'm going to have somebody who might not be as aggressive and want to go in over here. And so we know how to adapt our tactics based on the tendencies of people. And so we're in a really good place now. We've got ladder captains that love doing the job, love doing truck work, will go in and do search and rescue, but they're smart and observant enough to step back and be an operations level command if the scene is growing outside of the scope of the chief. And so when I came on, the ladder captains all were more of that operations, I'm going to step back and supervise mode. We're in such a better place right now. We've got some really, really excellent ladder officers.
Are your ladders straight?
Well, we've got they are 250-gallon tank, 2 crosslay, 100-foot. One is a stick and one is a bucket.
Okay.
And then our spare is a stick, and it's a 75-foot quint, but that's our spare ladder, because we have an industrial sector that their engine is a quint. So we use the older quint as our spare ladder. So we've got technically 2 sticks and a bucket. So, and then if they're 3-man rides, and an engineer that'll stay with the rig, and then an officer and a pipeman that are going to work.
Are the engines also 3-man?
Yes, they are. And we're lucky in Dearborn. Not a lot of suburbs around us have 3-man rides.
More like just 2, or even just a driver?
A lot will just have 2 in the engine, 2 on the ambulance. Some cities will even own a ladder truck, but only bring it to a scene if there's a larger fire.
Gotcha.
Whereas we have 2 ladder trucks in service every day of the year.
I mean, we're lucky to hit our former chief got us up to 4-man apparatus. But some days, man, it was a little more fun when there was 3 guys on the rig.
Yeah.
More work for everybody.
We've been offered 4-man back when NFPA 1710 came out back in the late 90s, early 2000s, but they would have done it at the cost of less engines. So we said, no, we'll keep more engines. That's because that's an engineer promotion, that's a lieutenant promotion, and that's a firefighter 2 promotion. So it's 3 promotions per day, per rig.
Yeah.
And so they said, yeah, we'll give you the 4-man ride, but we're going to take 2 engines away. So
and you're losing.
Yeah.
Well, you're not only losing the engines, but you're also losing the leadership capital, not capital, but lessons learning, because you're not getting as many guys promoted and going up to the ranks. So you're losing, you're almost, your succession planning is, cut substantially.
I like that phrase, succession planning. When Matt read the excerpt from the book at the start, I mentioned having a light at the end of the tunnel. Our department is very much like that. So your first 10 years, you're rotating on an engine and on the ambulance. So your first couple of years, it's going to be 80% ambulance, 20% engine. You get 5-6 years on, maybe it's 50-50. You get that 9-10 year on, it's maybe 20% ambulance, 80% engine. And then when you make engineer, then you're just driving the fire truck every day. And we set it up that way, and not a lot of suburbs do. But we have a rank structure, and we own ladder trucks, so we have another rank capability to separate lieutenants and captains, whereas some departments need an officer on every rig to justify having an officer position. So you can get promoted to lieutenant, and then you're just back on the ambulance. And so we don't want to do that, because sometimes our ambulances, now that when we had that staffing increase about 5-6 years ago, we went from 4 ambulances a day to 6 ambulances a day. And that was a game changer, because when we were at 4, these ambulances are doing 20 calls a day each.
Yeah, they're never sitting down.
They're never sitting down. They're never there. They're gassed. We got guys quitting, going to smaller departments. Guys taking pay cuts to go to their departments. Once we added those 2, now we got busy ambulances doing 10 to 12. Another 2 are doing 6 or 7 a day, and but it's still a grind. It's a grind because here in Wayne County, Michigan, we get a lot of people that love to call 911 for everything. And so one of the things we've dealt with in our city is losing employees to inner city departments, because there they say, I'm using my medic skills here. Whereas we're not getting as many traumas, we're getting a lot of minor medicals, because people just don't have the wherewithal to get themselves to a hospital, or they're confused as to this minor illness they have, or they just see us as being there for them.
So my question is, as you were going through your firemanship, we'll say, okay, you made that recognition that that's where I want to go. I want to become a boss. All right, and whatever that looks like. Obviously, you continued on. You just kept going to the next level, boss, next level, right? That's fantastic. When did you start realizing, what did you do to prepare to get there?
To prepare was, of course, the formal training. The state fire marshal sponsors a curriculum, and then various community colleges or fire academies can just put on a fire officer 1 or a fire officer 2 class, or an incident command class. So I started picking up the official certifications once I had about 5-6 years on. But so much of my development and the type of officer I wanted to be was the peer-to-peer learning, the talking with colleagues about things that went well at fire scenes and things that did not. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There's an anecdote I use in the book that I was working with an officer, and he was very book smart, and he's a very nice man, but was struggling at the job. And it was really early in the cell phone days. And I'm on the back of the rig. The engineer of the rig is senior to the lieutenant and had been passed over multiple times for this lieutenant spot. So really, really good firefighter. One of the ones we would just call street smart, and was just struggling on the written test, just passing it, but just he's getting passed up by the young, book smart, hotshot guys. And so this lieutenant is, we're just dealing with just hesitancy and an inability to make decisions. And it came to a head. We're at a semi-truck fire in the freeway. And immediately the engineer says to this lieutenant, hey, we're not going to have enough water. We only got 500 gallons. Do you want to call the rescue to meet us up here? And maybe they could grab some 2.5 and go to the top of that hill. I think the main road's got a hydrant. Or we could call another rig from another station and then we at least got another 500. And the officer pulls out the old flip phone. He goes, yeah, let me call the chief and see what he wants. And the engineer takes his hand and moves the phone away from his mouth, and then takes his finger and sticks it in his chest and says, listen, I don't want you to make a fucking phone call. I want you to handle it. And I stood back. I can't believe I'm seeing this, because the officer just said, just leave me alone. Let me make this call. And I got to check with the boss. And so on a couple of levels, I'm just shocked at what I'm watching. One, he had no qualms about yelling at an officer, about not addressing him by his rank, about swearing at him. And this officer had no care in the world about that. He was more worried about making a decision and being held accountable for it. He was worried about the consequences as if the chief wasn't happy with his decision, more than he was worried about how he was perceived by his crew. And I right there in the moment just said, oh my God, I'm never going to be that guy. And I learned more about leadership, command presence in that singular moment than I did in any textbook.
Yeah, that'll do it. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. When I first got hired, I think Matt caught the tail end of it. We were a very command driven department, and I shouldn't say all of our officers, most of the officers would default to that setting because they were the chief at the time. It was never make a decision, even if it's the wrong decision, just tell me why you made the decision, and then we can have a discussion about it, whether it was right or wrong.
Of course.
The officers at the time, and we had good officers, but they just didn't want to get pulled into the office or whatever and get berated by the chief at the time. So they just always defaulted to, well, let me see what the chief wants. And it's something simple as one of the guys I got hired with, we talk about him all the time because he is the epitome of the senior man in our fire department. And he asked, this is when we were still growing, and the firehouse that I'm currently the captain of, we were only working straight days, 12-hour days, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That is the worst shift. I mean, I was grateful to be a fireman at the time. I love being a fireman, but the only other worst shift I've ever worked when I worked for the local supermarket here in the warehouse, I would go in at 2 a.m. and set up for the butchers and leave at 10 a.m. That was the only other worst shift. But coming at 6, leaving, especially in the winter when it's dark out, and leaving at 6 when it's dark out. Anyways, at the time, the area wasn't as developed here as it is now, and the senior fireman, he wasn't a senior at the time, but he asked the officer, he goes, look, we have so much downtime right now. I'm going to bring in a puzzle to keep my mind occupied, because we weren't allowed to watch TV. We weren't allowed to do this. We weren't allowed to do that. And instead of the officer just being like, and we're we are as far away from headquarters as possible, as far away from the chief as possible. The chief never comes in this firehouse. And the officer is like, well, let me run it by the chief to make sure that's okay. To do a puzzle on his downtime. If you're calling the chief about someone to do a puzzle on your downtime, how are you going to make a decision on the fire ground when it comes something serious like that? Like where you know you're gonna need water. You know you need water. 500 gallons is not going to put out a tractor trailer fire.
Right. Yes, and I've seen so often, and I can't always blame these officers. That hesitancy to make a decision sometimes is a learned behavior, and so so many times I would blame the chief officers above them, and so it's just there's just layers to effective leadership, and it's the same reason why if a young guy is screwing up on the job, I immediately don't just dirtbag the guy. My first question is, how was he taught? Don't blame the young guy. Maybe it's not his fault. Let's find out what crew they're on and find out what work they're putting in. And it's behind the scenes story. Because I can make that same argument for some of these lieutenants that wanted to be put in that algorithmic box. It's because they were just afraid of getting in trouble. And I had to figure out what bad trouble is going to happen. It's a municipal governmental union job. They're more than likely not going to fire you. Why are so many people afraid? But they were. And to the point where I had seen people with 25 years on the job not back up their men when a mistake did happen, because he would then say, well, I've never been in the office and I'm not going in right now. I said, man, the bigger the badge, the bigger the shield. You got to be in front of your guys. If they had the best interest of their medical patient at heart, you got to stand in front of them and take it. And I mentioned this in the book. 25 years and you never made a mistake. Never 25 years you never had a judgment that you maybe could have rethought. 25 years and the boss never wanted to have a conversation. If you went 25 years and never got talked to, you've been sitting on the bench.
Yeah, I joke. I mean, I got a couple SOPs with my name on it. And it's, I got a couple. I got a couple general orders with my name on it. But that's because I made a decision. I stuck by my decision, and sometimes it was a wrong decision. And it is what it is. You take your lumps and you move on. Absolutely.
Matt mentioned I got caught up in a flashover about a year ago at the beginning, and in that. Anytime that happens, of course, we have to sit down and we got to train on this stuff. And I think my decisions ended up being understood by the leadership of the department and by the younger members of the department. But I had to be open to having those discussions and learning lessons and being open to maybe there was a different way to do things. And so we actually sat as a crew and did a fire incident review and talked about, well, what would the flow path have been had we opened a window first? What if we had attacked from this side instead of that side? And then what we came to learn was there was just so much gasoline in the house. Nothing would have changed because once we entered and opened that door, it just needed 33 seconds and air is all it needed. Yeah. But luckily, our tactics were sound. We knew not to go in far. Everything looked like it was an upstairs fire, but then we realized, oh, okay, we got a small fire in the living room. Let's just knock it down. It'll allow me to perform a search, because the 911 callers who called in the fire said, I watched the owner walk in the house 10 minutes ago, and I have not seen him leave. We then found out that he poured gasoline over the place, lit the house on fire, and hopped out a back window into an alley. So that's why he wasn't seen. But it at least allowed me I'm doing a search while my partner's hitting it, but we knew not to go deep into the room. We kept the back door right behind us. So our tactics were sound, and we were able to then make adjustments when the conditions changed.
And you had a justifiable reason.
Yes, we did.
To go in and do that search. Right. I mean, and it sounds like your department has taken a very progressive, non-punitive approach to looking at, these after action report. Yes. And we're lucky we've gotten to that point right now. We just did 2 after action reports on the two recent fires we did, and nothing's punitive. It's, what went right, what went wrong, what can we learn, and it's good. It's good for the members that weren't at these fires. It's good for the young members that haven't been. We have members that been on the job 2-3 years now that haven't even been on the nozzle for a fire yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the same thing we were saying with Dave Nowacki, is that, the experience tempo just isn't there. So we have to get creative with how we're pushing it to our membership, especially our younger guys. Now, I'll include myself in there. I'm not a young person, but I'm young. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, how do we catch up? Hey, here's how we do it. We got to get creative. We're going to capture everybody else's situations and try and use those as well. Not just the YouTube stuff, which is good information, but
it's luck of the draw. I mean, the probie I had last year, he was able to vent a roof on Thanksgiving, and then the following February, he was the nozzleman with me on at first in a substantial fire. And 6 months into the job, he got to do two major fireground tasks where we have probies now that
all the time.
It's just not seeing it.
Absolutely. And right before I retired, the probationary, we rotate him every 6 months. And so one in 6 months with me had, I want to say, 5 working fires, and he had a different task every time. And the next guy got 3 or 4. But then I talked with a dude with 3 years on the job, and he's been third due at 1 fire in 3 years. And so that's where we're so different than a Detroit or a Baltimore or a South Chicago, where like Dave was saying, he had 90 fires in his first year. You don't get that many now. The Detroit Post, their last mayor is really addressed vacant homes. So they went from 60,000 vacant homes down to maybe 25,000. And so their arsons are way down, but they're still getting, if you're at the right station, you're still going to get, I don't know, 3-4 fires a week. Yeah. If you're at the right station. So, and for them, it's their training is just a world that I was never going to know in Dearborn.
Yeah, it's on the job training at that point. Yeah.
So you brought up the truck fire and how that officer reacted to that, or didn't react, essentially. And you have a statement in here. I stand there dumbfounded, unable to believe that a company officer either couldn't make a decision or didn't want to make one. I can't believe this officer didn't care about how he was perceived, and honestly, I don't think he can even be aware of how he was appeared. The engineer provided 3 solid options for him to choose from, but for some reason, he was more afraid of what his boss would say if he had made a decision that didn't work than what his crew would have thought of him. Picking a course of action and adjusting as the situation changed wasn't an option. He wanted the safety of shifting the responsibility to someone else. This little paragraph stands out because I think it could be the pivotal point of your entire book, because you take from this point, everything can connect back to this. It goes into how you use this, and every one of these aspects you can draw back to that and go, hey, I don't want to be that. Just like you stated earlier, I don't want to be this type of officer. I don't want to be that type of officer. You're taking the classic hits, and instead of looking at them, I want to be this guy, I want to take this portion of this guy, this portion of this guy. You're also accepting these. I don't want to do what this guy's doing. I don't want to do what these guys. And then you're still putting your own flair on it. And then you're coming out on top with these, you're boiling it all down, and you have these like mini standards that you create for yourself. And I think not just for yourself, but you're saying, hey, everybody should be following this. And it leads right to the discipline level, which is next chapter, right? And one of the sentences you say is, rather than jumping directly to discipline, I was able to have an informal talk. These talks, if kept in confidence, can go a long way to getting people to feel like part of the team and buy into the mission. The reason that pivots back to that other one is that where that guy offered 3 options and was shut down completely, guess what he's not going to do on the next call? He's not going to offer any options. So now we have a lack of discipline, or a lack of decision leads to guys fearing to bring up options, which leads to we're degenerating, right? We're losing steam.
I've seen it where not afraid to give options, but it's more like, you know what? F this guy. Let him burn on his own.
Right.
Seen, you know.
But if we got somebody that's providing a lot of options and maybe they're freaking left field too far, it's like, dude, we need to dial back by going into this. Now we're adding in some discipline, and it's not discipline in terms of, all right, we're going to take them out back and beat them with a hose, right? This is, we're trying to change or edit a behavior. And this is how we do it. Make them feel comfortable with the idea of sitting down and talking.
I don't know. Is it a thing that's a fire service thing? Because I talked to so many people that work in business, and they all talk about mistakes being addressed through formal documentation, HR paperwork, corrective action forms. And it's, for us, it's so much easier. There was another fire podcast, and a guy said one of the keys of being a fire officer is you want to identify and address issues early. That is everything, and I've always believed that if you're constantly putting out fires inside the station, you haven't been properly leading people to begin with. If people are making small mistakes, catch them when they're small and provide them some encouragement. And that's what's nice about being in a municipal full-time, specifically labor union fire department, is your city's not going to fire you. You really got to mess up to get fired, because if they were to just let people go off the cuff all the time, it would paralyze the operation, because everybody's now afraid. And we just can't save lives afraid to make decisions. The decisions have to happen too much. And then sometimes your decision has to then change into another decision 10 seconds later when conditions change. And if you're constantly making decisions based on whether you're going to get in trouble, it paralyzes the entire operation.
Sure, I've never even thought of it that way. Why it needs to be that way. That's a great point.
Yeah, I have 2 times as a company officer had to informally counsel somebody enough to where I wrote it in an email and emailed my boss. And that was just as a protection, so I could, if this thing was to happen again, they can't come back and say nobody ever told me. That was
right. Yeah, that's
every other time it was pull them aside or give it to the senior guy and have him pull this person aside, because now I get a twofold benefit. One, they're more likely to listen to a peer of theirs, and 2, this senior guy is now getting the practice, the leadership lesson of having to coach and mentor somebody.
Yeah, but so are you as the officer, because
Yes.
you're deciding to allow that environment to take shape, right? Versus stepping and go, no, I'm going to teach this today. No, I'm only going to handle the new guy. No, I'm only going to do that. Don't you do this. Don't you do it, right? Instead of shutting people down along the way, now you got nobody who wants to work, not just with you, but work.
Right.
Now give them all an opportunity to do something. Going back to that our opening where it's like, hey, we can't pay you any more for doing more, but there's perks here. One of those perks is you feel great about what you did when you walk out in the morning or at the end of shift.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you don't have that, boy, we didn't pay him anymore. He's just collecting a paycheck. He's not going to offer up anymore, or she, it doesn't matter, but the person's not going to do anything extra. They're just coming in, and man, it makes everybody's life miserable when that drains the quality of the rest of the crew as well.
Yes. That is the thing in the fire service. The guy in the recliner is what we call him. I don't know what it's like at your guys' department, but yeah, you could tell the guys that are in the recliner all day versus the guys that are participating with their crew and are motivated and want to do stuff. I listened to a podcast. I don't know his name, but is a lawyer out of Houston. And he talks a little bit about the law and a little bit about management. And somebody had asked him, why do you pay your partners $300,000 to $400,000 a year? That's a lot of money. And he said, it's golden handcuffs. Once I pay them partnership type money or give them equity in the firm, I now got them. And I got them for 18-hour days if I want 18-hour days out of them. And they can't leave because that money is so attractive. We don't have that in the fire service. I get incremental raises when you get promoted. But what I can do is I can give you a break off the ambulance. I could give you more days on the back of the engine or the back of the truck company, because to take the load off of how many years you've put on the ambulance. I could give the assignment of having to put the gear on at the fire safety talk to the junior guy because you've been doing it for 5 years. I'm going to give you a break. We're going to make him crawl around the kindergarten floor, and let him learn how to communicate with children. So he's learning too, but I'm giving this guy a break. So it's about earning that respect through years of hard work, that we can have those privileges within the fire service that I think makes our career a little unique from the corporate world.
Yeah. Somebody, one of our guys, it actually comes up in negotiations a lot, but he coined it the invisible chip. When you're trying to negotiate with something or have buy-in, sometimes you offer up something or you're purchasing something for some of worth of something else, but you have an invisible chip that you kind of convince them there's worth that you just pulled out of thin air, right? It's not, I'm not downplaying what he's saying, but it's you're creating worth from something that you can't give otherwise. I can't give you more dollars. I can give you a $5 raise or slip you some extra money under the table or something like that. But I can give you something that to you, it's very, very valuable if I give it to you, but you're not going to get it anywhere else. And that's the same concept with that. I almost said golden parachute, but let's say it's $400,000 partnership check. Okay, you want to leave? You go to the next joint. You're not getting 400 grand. You got to earn that level of respect and all that other stuff all over again. So that's the golden handcuff. That was it. The golden handcuff is, I can't because now I'm making too much here. So I might as well put more work in. And it's interesting to hear that concept, because I don't know if I like the money thing, because now it's like, now you're forcing someone to accept it versus getting them to buy into it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it's like to, because we have Ford Motor Company here in Dearborn, headquartered in. So we're all have a cursory knowledge of what it's like to work there. And I've talked to a number of people. I'm an engineer, then I'm the team leader. Now I'm going to be a project leader. And then if this project goes well, yeah, maybe when I get to year 15, I could be second in line for a VP job. And then all of a sudden I go from making 100 grand as an engineer, but I just work on this project. And then I go to VP. But now if I'm going to be the VP, there's no more telling Bill Ford Jr. or Jim Farley that, hey, my kid's got a dance recital tonight. That those words don't work in that world. If there's a problem, you're going to work a 22-hour day, or you're not going to be a VP. There's that pressure in the corporate world if you want to advance that high. And I've seen this in a sports podcast. When like you want to be a head coach, you want to be a head coach in the NFL. The off season's the off season, but yeah, those dudes are working. They're sleeping at those practice facilities. Dan Campbell is not driving home to Birmingham every night at 4 p.m. He's in the season. He's there in Allen Park, right down the street from where I live, and his car's in that lot until 11 o'clock at night every single day, combing over film. You're not going to be a head coach in the NFL if you're not going to for 4 months a year work those 20-hour days. So the corporate world is so different from what we have. And that's why I just love the ability to give people job perks.
There's so as an officer going through this, right? Because a lot of this book is how to be a good officer, or how to prepare to be a good officer, or things you can do to adjust to get better. And handling all those, you're still passing off. So we kind of focused on the fireman and the senior man, or whoever that is, the older person, handling the day-to-day aspects and giving them a little bit extra sense of purpose so they get the buy-in. But the other side of that is that the officer is still practicing on how to get their people to buy in, right? And that's, I'm going to offer him this option of, hey, would you like to run drill today? Would you like to do this today? Or, hey, I really need you to do this. And one important thing is always explaining, or at least making sure they understand the importance of it. I really need you. It's not like, hey, today you're going to run fire extinguisher training. Oh, like we all got that guy who's going to scoff at that. Why do I got to do that? Be like, I want you to run fire extinguisher training today because you've been in that can position the most amount of years out of everybody else. You understand the intricacies of it, and you have these little tips and tricks on how to move this thing around on the floor on all fours, standing up, crawling in the dark, whatever. There's nobody better than you. So we really, really need you. We rely on you with your knowledge. Can you do this for me? Gee, Cap, yeah, I don't want to let you down. That's the thought. I don't want to let you down. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. Right. You just got buy-in. Instead of telling them straight up, you're going to run this. They go, I don't want to be told what they do. You got
I
buy-in.
like your phrase, we need you.
You showed them the importance of their value, right? The invisible chip. They're valuable. You've just told them that they have value that maybe they didn't know. And by giving that, right? I didn't give you $5 extra, but I told you you're worth more. And we really need you to do it if you could, right? And they almost on the other side, the backside of that is if you say no, most likely they're going to feel a little guilty for saying no. Like, man, now I'm letting the team down. And this team dynamic is, you point out in the book too, that the firehouse it's the one tool that's not on the rig that you get to use every day, for team building exercises as both the officer practicing doing officer duties and as the team coming together and alive. And that's everything from cooking and cleaning to house chores, right? Team building skills. And it's funny because when I read through this, I immediately thought we just had a project at our station where we redid, they remodeled the kitchen. And Cap, I don't know how many times you've asked the guys, hey, pick out some paint. So why are you asking? What? Right? Why are you going to ask? First of all, don't ask 16 guys to pick out paint. You're going to get 42 different answers. But, then they come together. They start having the conversation amongst themselves. Well, what about this? Well, if it matches this, it matches it. They're working together as a team. They're coming together and alive when otherwise they might scurry and they're like cockroaches when you flick the lights on, type of thing. Great tool. It's interesting. He didn't say, hey, I really need you to do this because you're the paint man for the job. Just said, hey, you guys pick this out. It's your station too. Now you got ownership too. So you got the value. Now you got ownership, and when they pick out that color and everybody comes in, they might have picked out like one of the colors that we had. I actually like the color that came out. A lot of people are like, it's kind of ugly, but everybody else that's from outside the station comes in and says, I don't know if I would have gone, but nah, you get the hell out. Like they got right. They got ownership now. That's our station, guy. And you're not going to talk shit about our station, right? We didn't like the color, but somehow we picked it, but now we got ownership of it. It's a great tool by the officers.
It really is. Yeah.
It's freaking paint.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, a station project, it can mean so much more because if they can't put this, bookshelf together, or they can't put this TV stand together, or they can't hook up the new cable and the TV that we just bought with our own money.
All of these things that you're listing, we go through constantly.
If they can't organize themselves as a team to do this, it's only going to get that much harder on the fire ground. So these station projects have a twofold benefit. One, they're working as a team, and two, they're buying in to the workability and livability of our workplace.
Yeah. So now as an officer, you're doing all this practice, you're just gonna be more natural and fluid on the fire ground when stuff's going, the eyes are trying to start to dilate on you, and you're just no, or constrict, and you're going, no, I want to see full vision. It's easy. Heart rate's still calm because I work with these guys all the time. I know how they're gonna react. Point, you do this task, or say I need this task and task B done, and they're gonna just go and do it because they're so used to working together.
Yes, exactly. In your department, does your officer getting off the rig generally give out one or two quick assignments to the second engine or the rescue crew or the guy in the back of the rig, or do you have riding positions where everything's set in stone?
Cap, what do we got?
We're kind of transitioning into riding assignments.
Okay.
We're probably 90% there for riding assignments where we don't have the guys get off the rig and they know what their assignment, what they're supposed to do on the fire ground.
I see. We don't, because the medical call volume is just so high that I rarely would go to a fire with the same group of people 2 times in a row. Because chances are somebody on my station is going to be on a medical run somewhere. I got 2 ambulances and an engine and a chief, or somebody's going to be on an alarm, or the station next door, they're going to be on a medical. So I'm going to arrive first instead of second. And so our department has guidelines. So first engine generally going to be pulling a line, second engine grabbing a hydrant. Unless you're on a corner, then there's a hydrant right there. The second engine could walk right up and ask for an assignment. A truck company is going to pull in front of the house and do search and rescue first. If no search and rescue is needed, look for a way to ventilate, either horizontally or get up on the roof and do it vertically. And then the ambulance crew, they could be my door control, they could be my forcible entry. They're a little bit more of a gap filler, but it requires now a company officer off that first or second rig to be able to get off and then look at the crew and say, rescue crew, force the door for me. And then I just know it's going to be done. Or, hey, chief, get the ladder up on the roof. It's really coming out of the eaves. And so we have to make some limited scene calls. And that was a lesson I learned early on, was if those calls are not made calmly, it just spirals out of control and your scene gets harder and harder to manage. So that was on some of my helmet cam. I've got so many people in the comments, especially when it gets reposted on one of the major sites, would say, wow, this guy is talking like he's ordering at a drive-through window, or he's talking like he's at the kitchen table. That's an intentional thing on my part. It didn't come naturally. I had to work at it, but it's something that I strive to do, is to be that calm voice on the radio, doing that size up, or just go into a crew and just say, force the door, I'm going to pull a line. And then I would just go pull the line and assume the door is going to be forced when I get there.
I will say, and Matt, you probably will agree with me, our firehouse, because we are a quint, we try to act like a truck most of the time, but because we're a single apparatus house, we're not a single engine house, we're the only quint in this firehouse. There are some times where you get on scene and the north side engine might be at a medic because they're busy with medical all the time. And it's like, I look at the guys like, we got to pull a line at this one, fellas. Yep. And you get the groans because they don't want to pull a line.
The tears in the eyes.
We normally operate as a truck company, and the guys here want to operate as a truck company. But the firehouse that Matt and I both work at, the company officers have to make more of those decisions than the other firehouses, because headquarters is a dual house, engine and a truck. So they only work as an engine or a truck. And then the north side firehouse is just an engine company. So they're not going to be doing truck work if they're first in. Mm-hmm. So where we are, we're kind of an anomaly where there is a chance that we're going to be the base unit as an engine at a fire.
Yeah, same thing when we go to the west of our district. It's
mutual
all
aid, yeah.
Mutual aid is all volunteer based out there, and when we run out, because we're closer to them, usually we're tapped for that assignment. Man, you're pulling up, it might be minutes away for the first engine, so you become the first engine. So now it's up to the boss to make that decision for the most part. We kind of, after running it, 10 times a year, 20 times a year, you get a good feeling for it. Being in the back seat, but it'll be things of that nature, like, we're first in, engines a while back. That's a spur of the moment call by the boss. He's going to say, all right, guys, switching tactics, we're engine, right? In our riding assignments, we do have riding assignments per each seat, and there's one side of the coin is if we're acting as an engine, one side of the coin is if we're acting as a truck. So each seat does know its responsibilities. It's very rare that the seats itself will change responsibilities. It's got to be something very, very different than our regular plays. So yeah, we kind of have an SOG on all that.
So for example, the chauffeur and the fireman riding behind the chauffeur, if we're operating as a truck company, they're going to be our outside team, throwing ladders, venting, or whatever they got to do. And then the officer and whoever sits behind me is the can. We're going in and searching. Conversely, if we have to operate as an engine, the guy behind me, he's the nozzleman. The guy behind the chauffeur is either going to be making the hydrant or as our backup guy on the line. But, every firehouse, I don't know if you guys had like kind of in-house SOPs, SOGs, like we might operate like a few. So like my group operate just the way I want them to operate, because for some reason our first due, we catch a rash of garage fires.
Yeah.
And my thought is, the garage fires are typically fought from the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy can operate a hand line from the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think besides that hand line knocking the fire down, the second most important thing is making sure that man door is shut on the inside and getting a search completed. So the way my group operates, and I've tried to get this in formally to our department, is that on garage fires, one man can operate that hose line from the driveway and send the officer and the next guy make sure that make sure that man door shut. That's kind of like an in-house SOG, but it's one of the decisions that the company officer has got to make on the fly.
Yeah,
right. And we have a couple of stations that will have their own intricacy, but we coach them to not get too crazy with it and to have it be reasonable, like you're saying. So this way, if there's a trade guy, or if you're coming from a different part of town, you can still be adaptable.
Yeah, we're not operating outside of our SOGs. We're just kind of in the gray area.
Yes, we have one segment of town that is in an industrial neighborhood, and so whether it's factories, warehouses, or a legit fully functioning steel mill, and they're also segmented off. They're about an extra 2 minutes away from the normal second due response, just because of where they're located. And they would occasionally have to make an in-house decision of deployment that was a little bit different, but we hopefully were able to manage around that over the years.
Yeah.
So we've discussed how to work with the team, assign the team, make adjustments, practice as being the leader, and then how to utilize that informal leader, we'll say, which typically is the older fireman or firefighter. And then your next section rolls right into the challenges we're seeing as who are those people teaching as well, or who are they taking under their wing? And I want to touch base on this quickly, but through the lens of the officer. Because Lou and I just discussed this. We've discussed this quite a few times, actually. It comes up a lot, I should say, the newer generation. And your conclusion here is very similar to what we have. And I want to see how you arrived at this. You say that there's no doubt that some of the applicants we are getting have a different background than a generation before. There isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just young people today come with a different set of skills, which means leaders cannot use only strategies of the past to motivate them. Remember, it's not their fault. It is our job as leaders to work with these people that we have, and our job is to train, teach, and mold them regardless of the challenges. How did you arrive at this, and what was your experience with this before you retired?
It was a slow and steady realization that a lot of people that were coming through high school, and this was, man, I'm going to say his name again. This is a drum Mike Rowe's been beating for years, and I saw it teaching EMT and paramedic at a community college. We're getting so many kids that had, due to budget cuts or the everybody has to go to college push that we saw late 90s, early 2000s, that we were getting kids that knew how to work the computer, could do anything on a computer report. If the computer died and we got to get a priority one medical patient report done for this trauma surgeon, they could repair it and it would be great. But he doesn't know how to work a hand tool. We had to go as far as in our applicant interview, give them a drill, a screw, and a piece of wood to see if they knew how to attach the bit, directionally tighten or loosen the screw, how to hold the tool, because and then it gave us a viewpoint of the things that we were going to need to then beef up once people got on. And so, like I said, different skill sets, and it's not their fault. It's the way they were taught. But it certainly was a challenge. And it's really odd because I saw it not only in the fire service, I saw it a ton at the community college. Students that would say, "Hey, I don't learn very well. I'm going to need extra time on the test. I'm going to need or somebody to read me the questions. But once they would get into EMT or paramedic, hands-on, here's the anatomy. Here's where a bullet goes into the chest. Here's the way the lung collapses. Now let's watch me breathe, and I'm gonna show you how I get short of breath, and watch how the lungs pushing into the heart, and what's that going to do to the vessels. And let's break down the blood flow. And I'm mechanically showing pictures with arrows, and we're making everything so hands-on with the lecture material that I never once had a student, by the time we would get to the midterm, need a reader anymore, or need extra time, or need a quiet room to go to. And then I slowly realized, oh, these people were labeled as learning disabled, ADHD, dyslexia people, but they're just hands-on learners. But since their school canceled auto shop and wood shop and metal shop their entire life, they were just taught that they were less than, and always felt that they didn't fit. And I've now got them in a hands-on environment, and they're thriving. And so there were both through the fire service and the EMT paramedic teaching, I started to realize that this 90s 2000s generation is going to be different, but it's not better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah, I would agree. I've said it before. I think one of my biggest regrets is not staying with the shop classes that were offered when I was in high school. I mean, there was still woodworking. There wasn't the metal shop. It got brought back, and then it got and then no more, because that teacher retired. But you bring up Mike Rowe. I don't know if you listened to the same one I was listening to. They had the submarine manufacturers. He was talking to.
No, I was not.
He was talking to the I don't know if it's two or three of the companies that manufacture submarines for the United States military. And they went to Mike Rowe, and he says, I need 250,000 welders and pipe fitters and whatever else you need to build a submarine. And I need them by next year. What can you do for me? Through his foundation. And he goes, and then they went on to say, I need 750,000 of these people in the next 7 years. And Mike Rowe looked at him and goes, they're all in 7th grade. That you got to start when they're in 7th grade, because you don't have any right now.
Yep. And
I hope we have a program in New York State called WMOCO, where it was always kind of shunned, because it was like you said, it was like the lesser kids, the kids that couldn't succeed academically, they went to WMOCO and they learned trades. And my cousin who went to WMOCO, he's now the foreman of the town DPW shop.
A lot of the high schools around us have consolidated through a couple of school districts and just built a vocational center. So while the school doesn't offer an auto shop, maybe 5 districts will just invest into one building, and then they'll send 10 kids each year to this program.
That's essentially what it is.
Absent of the schools being able to afford to do it themselves. And that's a great development.
Yeah, it's a county-based vocational school. Like, they'll go for their core classes, their math or whatever, sure, but then they go half a day to the vocational school. And nowadays, with what's coming out in the news with AI and everything else, all these classes that you were told you needed to go to college for, those aren't going to be around anymore. It's the people, it's the firemen, police, EMTs, the pipe fitters, anything else, something that a computer can't do. Yeah. Those are the jobs that are going to be around in 10, 15, 20 years.
And an AI data center, I mean, it's so many kilowatt hours that those places are taking, which is why a lot of towns don't want them in their community. But that's a ton of electrician jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Just not only to build it, but to maintenance it over the next 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad to see we're starting to shift back away from the everybody needs a bachelor's degree. And we've just saddled an entire generation of kids with $120,000 of student loan debt, and half of them have just went into trades. So many people I know that have bachelor's degrees don't work in the field that their degree is in.
Yeah, our buddy who's now retired, his son, how old is he? 21, 22?
Mhm.
He's a
Yeah, he's got it right in there.
journeyman electrician making
He's killing
$120,000 a
it.
year,
He's killing it.
killing
Absolutely.
it,
For sure.
killing it. He
Yeah.
started when he was 19 as an apprentice right out
Yep.
of high school,
Mhm.
and owns his own house. It
Yeah.
just, God bless him,
Yeah, good for them, because I know a ton of auto mechanics and electricians and plumbers that have a 4-year degree in business administration, and
Now
just said,
I
I wanted to work. I just realized once I got the degree in my hand, I want to work with my hands. I've just wasted 4 years. I'm just 4 years behind the curve.
now I wouldn't say I wasted the 6 years I went to college, because it was kind of an awakening for me to get my head out of my ass. Um, it did I spend a couple $1,000s to party and whatever, and then once it was like, oh crap, I'm going to drop out of the 4-year school. I got to figure out something I'm going to do. And the fire department was always in the back of my mind, because my old man was a volunteer here, my grandfather was a volunteer here. And I was like, I started looking into it, and I was like, well, you can actually make a career out of this. And I talked to some of my old man's friends who were on the job here, and they sent me on the path that I needed to go on. But my college experience set me up to get to where I am now, not because of my degree, because of my failure in college.
I
And I think
think
it's a different path.
I think I got to agree. Very similar story. If I didn't go through the college, if I didn't go through the experience post college, I probably wouldn't have selected this or done what I'm doing now. If I still somehow miraculously ended up in the fire service, I don't think I would be where I am inside of it, interested in the ropes, the tech rescue stuff and everything else. I think I'd just be like, it's a job. I clock in, I clock out. Maybe, I don't know. I'm very, very grateful for going through those things, going through those processes. But my uncle once said a long time ago, it doesn't matter what your degree is in. If you get a bachelor's, you get a bachelor's. If you get an associate's, you get an associate's. If you go up on further, what it's doing is it's a benchmark to display to somebody that's looking at you as a valuable tool to their instruments, right? And saying this person for sure has the capability of learning and working at this level, right? The next level. Now, there's
Yeah, I
people
think
without
Elon
degrees
Musk
that,
said that once. He goes, uh, college degrees for what he does at Tesla. He said it shows me that you can do your homework and you can follow tasks and you're teachable. But there's a point in which I just want to know what you know. Show me what you know.
right?
Yeah.
Now you walk around with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the certificate to say I can operate at this level instantly versus everybody else. There's a ton of people out there don't have degrees, dude. These guys are rocket surgeons in their home.
Mhm.
Most firefighters, we call it firefighter engineering for a reason, because
Yeah.
we come up with shit on the fly,
Mhm.
and most people come into this with no trade background whatsoever, no
And
degree, no formal education, but they're good at stuff, at
it's
creating.
such a dichotomy, because you look at some of the most successful people, at least in the United States, and they don't have college
Yeah,
degrees, or they were college dropouts or even high school dropouts, and they're the multimillionaires. And then you look at people that I got buddies that went to school for 6-7 years, and they're still paying off student loans, and
Yep.
they're successful in their own right, but
Yeah, and that's what's I think nice about what we've seen in the last couple of years in the labor market is, and hopefully we now start to see that in the fire service. The community college I worked at ended up just canceling their entire EMS program just of lack of enrollment over the course of 10 years. So the other community colleges have stepped up and picked up the slack. Let's wait and see what the numbers are going to be in a couple of years.
do you think the decline of enrollment is because of the way the EMS service is right now?
I think a lot of it was pay. Michigan,
Yeah.
when they went national registry, increased the hours. So if you
Mhm.
went to a trade school, it's really not that bad. But if you went to a community college, it was 72 credit hours for basic EMT, med terminology, paramedic, and then your clinical hours. So you're paying that to get a basic or a private ambulance job for $10 an hour.
yeah,
It was
which is an
68.
associate's degree.
Yeah, Yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
an
You know,
associate, but they not all of it counted towards, so you didn't get the degree. But the nursing program at the same school was 68 credit hours. So, if you get a nurse, if you're willing to work nights and weekends and pick up some bonus money, you can clear 80 your first year. Whereas in a
yeah.
private, you're making 25 to 30.
It's
Now the
been,
money's in the fire service. The money's there at the end of the career. I
yeah,
did great my last couple of years, but yeah, it's 15 years in the making.
it's been 20 years since I was at the community college here, but I remember when I enrolled, they tried to entice me to get into the paramedic program. I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. But the way they would entice people to go into the paramedic program was the paramedic program in New York is so rigorous is that once you finish the paramedic program, it was like you had to do one more semester and you would have your nursing degree.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. See, ours isn't even close. So the medics I know that want to be nurses had to apply for a bridge program, and it was still a year,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
even though they knew a lot of the material.
All right, so we talked about the skill sets that these fresh batch is coming in with, and that's like the physical skill set. Now we got to talk about the social skill set, and this is where Lou, I want to pick your brain and match notes with you, Mark, because I think you guys have some overlap. So, what are they coming in? How is it different, and how are we handling it as supervisors?
They're coming in with less social skills. And a lot of it is just the phones and devices. So the conversation, the getting to know people, the making friends, the talking to strangers are skills we had to teach. I mentioned in the book, there's one officer I knew that actually just put a box on the dining room table and said, everybody's phone's in the box at dinner time. We're going to talk to each other. We're going to get to know each other. And the one or two very shy young guys we have, we're going to draw them out of that box a little bit.
So I just wrote this down. I want it, and it ties into our conversation we were just talking about with this younger generation, because we've seen it here where and I think it's across the county here and in the city department, that we're hiring such young people. Like we never hired people that you had to be 21 years old to even think about getting a county job. The city department would hire 18-year-olds because they had a program through the high school. It was a good program. They got some good firemen out of it. But prior to, I would say, the recent 5 years, Matt, when we've hired some really young individuals, nobody's had prior job experience.
I've only seen that in the last couple of months.
Okay.
When I hired on, everybody came from another department because it was that competitive. They were getting 700 to 1,000 apps. So why pick some young kid? They expected you to build your resume over years, and we would hire people at 26 or 27. And I would say in the last 2 years, we've hired two 19-year-olds and a couple of 20-year-olds. And yes, shockingly, one to two of them didn't even work a McDonald's job when they were 16.
Yeah, and I think that's a growing trend now. I mean, we walk in to the local grocery store, Wegmans here, and they have colored name tags. Pink in New York State, you can work when you're 15 with a parent's permission slip. Yellow was 16 and 17, and gray was 18 and over. And usually all the cashiers across a line were all pink and yellows because that's pretty much all they could work. And you don't see that. You don't see young kids working anymore. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know where they're getting their money from. I know if I didn't work when I was 15, 16, 17, I didn't have money.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the prior job experience, a lack of prior job experience, is tied into the social thing.
Yes. I would say they're the same issue.
Yeah. And it's funny because Matt, I can send it to you. I can send it to you in our group chat that we have. Matt sent me a thing. It was talk about phones and video games. Matt sent me a post off of Instagram, and it's funny because I sent it to my wife because my son my son is our middle child, and he's 10. He'll be 11 in February, and he's got an iPad, and we've regulated it a lot. And what we've had to detox him a couple times from the iPad, and I see this with the phones and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a recent post on Instagram regarding video games with this generation coming up, and video games which we grew up in. I don't know if did you play video? Did you have like a Nintendo or anything like that?
Yeah, a little bit of Nintendo growing up.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big gamer, but I did know what they were. So the Donkey Kong and the Madden
Super
90,
Mario Brothers,
Madden 93, Madden 94 were kind of fun ones.
It correlated that those video games in the late 80s, early 90s, Super Mario Brothers, when it came out, the original, you started out with 3 lives. And if you didn't find the green mushroom, you didn't get any more lives. And if you lost all 3 lives, you started over. And the video games now, they're endless. So there's no failure in these video games.
How about this one? And I hadn't thought about it until you just brought it up. In those old video games, you plugged in, so you're playing next to your friend. Yep. Whereas now your friend is virtual, and they could live in another state, and you've never met them personally.
And that was one of the reasons why we did get this iPad, and because we have cousins that live in Wilmington, and cousins, so it gives the cousins a little connectivity.
Yeah.
But that's a social aspect of just the electronics that we grew up with. Nintendo had 2 controllers. I think the next Sega still had 2, and then I don't think it was till PlayStation where they had 4, maybe.
I think N64 was 4.
Let's take this argument to
N64 had 4, yeah.
Right. Let's take this argument to the next level. I talked about different skill sets. And one of my favorite things that about our training now is, like I said, the social media videos that are out there are so vast and so frequent, and there's such great learning opportunities that before, years ago, our tabletop training was always something you did when it was raining, or you didn't have time to go to the training house, or the call volume was too high, and it was always a fallback. Now the tabletop training is legitimately valuable and very beneficial and super educational. But to do it, I would have to send the Instagram link or the YouTube link to one of the young guys via a text message. It would say, can you cast that to the TV so we could all see it? Because I can't figure out how to cast it. And then we would watch the Stockton video or this one off of whatever Instagram page, and let's read the smoke together, and let's see, why did they go offensive here, and then why did they stretch a dry line into the front floor, into the front door, because we're seeing this smoke pattern here, and the fire's likely upstairs. And so we're finding just endless ways to break down fires. But I remember that having to be a young guy thing, because I couldn't figure out how to put down the television set.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. That's using your tools, right? Getting that buy-in. Yeah. Hey, kid, can you launch this thing for me and pull up the SOP so we can do it instead of printing it off? You know, you're saying, hey, you got value. Can you work this stuff? Because we don't know how to do. You're brand new and you know how to do this. Sure. You run it, right? Okay, they pull it up. They feel important. They feel part of the group. And then as soon as you bust through the SOG or whatever, they go, okay, now we're going to butts on the app bay floor and let's start doing something, whether it's, climbing to the ceiling on ropes or throwing ladders up, whatever it is, When
you said tabletop thing, the first thing that went into my mind was I don't know if you guys ever had the villages with like the train sets and the fake roads and Matchbox cars.
Okay. Yes. So for me, the word tabletop just meant I don't have time to do practical stuff, but I want to do something. And so
it's funny. There's a what you call it, outdoor store. It's in town over. Oh, what is it called? It's on Buffalo Road. What is that? Garden Center, the Garden Center.
Oh, the Garden Factory.
Yeah, Garden Factory. That's it. So they have somebody comes in and there's a whole bunch of people that put together this giant tabletop with trains, all sorts of different scale model trains. It's a whole little village, and there's working parts, and there's a little lumber mill thing in there and everything. Dude, there's something cool. You should take the guys over there, especially the young guys, go over there and use it. See if you can borrow that. All right, let's tabletop this. Say we got something here, how are we going to approach it? Okay, we got the tracks. We have a lot of tracks in our district too. So use the actual tabletop as a tabletop. You know?
Right. In fact, just a little bit of trivia, but we turned it into a training thing. Have you heard of Lionel trains?
Yes, that's what this is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we had them growing up.
CEO and owner, the actual physical owner of the company, lives in my city, Dearborn, and he passed away about 2 years ago. Decently well off. It's one of 3 businesses he owns. He's owned Lionel trains for a lot. I think he bought it in the 70s, and owns like 3 other companies. So he lives well, but not in a mansion. But he lived in a condominium complex, and they are 2-story slanted roofs, 1.5 kind of bungalow condos that are connected. And he bought the whole thing. So he's got this L shape of 3 condos, and he just had the walls taken out. So now he's got this 5,000 square foot condo where when he reached the end of his life, he was running into a lot of slip and falls and invalid assists. So we're going there all the time. And so he goes, hey, take a look around, because sometimes I'm in that room and you might have, and I remember physically getting lost. And so I got to like listen for voices to figure out how to navigate this place. And so it became training. Every time we would go, I would say, hey, make sure this guy comes with us. Send the other rescue, because it's got this new guy. I need the new guy to see this house. And then it was just a thing that we got to see the Lionel train dude's house, because if we ever got to go here and it's the real deal, we're absolutely getting lost if this place is smoky. I'm never going to find my way around here, but let's make it a thing. And so it was a creative way to find some training. And it touches base just on a completely different subject from the fire service, but there was this business owner who had some means, and he cuts up a condo complex. And so we found another way to train on stuff that was practical and fun.
Yeah. It's always good to find those off the wall, or I don't know if off the wall is the proper term, but the training when there's not a formal training, informal training, like on a medical run.
Right.
A lot of times when we go to not every time, because then it kind of dilutes it. But after we get done with the medical call, I'll just be like to the guys, I'll be like, where were the stairs?
Yeah.
And they'll look at me like, how do you not know where the stairs were?
Yeah, good point.
Love it. It's so valuable to do that. And not only that, we've had a number of fires in our city where it's not easy to find the stairs. We've got ranches, bungalows, but then the occasional colonial, the occasional bungalow where they blew the roof out, put a staircase in the middle somewhere. And then we've got a few rental 2-flats. And some will have a staircase off the back. Some will have a staircase right in the center. Some are going to have a staircase off to the side with a separate door. And yeah, that's absolutely valuable training. We've done that one a few times. Where are the stairs?
That's perfect.
Yeah, it really is. And it's practical, it's real world, and it's been needed. In fact, we had a fatal fire maybe 4 years ago, and another company officer told me, and one guy on my crew told me on the way there. So this is now 3 different young firemen en route telling their company officer, I know where the guy's at. I've been on 7 invalid assists here. He only goes to 2 rooms in his house. Follow me and I will lead you to him. And it was the young guys just going on medical runs, paying attention. And they knew it from the address. They remembered the address, and they absolutely did. They found the dude. They knew exactly where he was going to be, and they dragged him out. He ended up. It made it a few days, so he didn't survive, but he made it long enough to be alive to say goodbye to his family in an ICU a couple of days later. So it really made a difference. Their knowledge, their paying attention, like you said, them buying in. It made a difference to this family in this man's life.
And then
Yeah,
using their skill sets as well. So
Yes,
it's
for
okay.
sure.
So we have the traditionalist who knows the route to get there because they grew up in that town or they've been down these roads so many times. They're used to seeing street signs, the pavement, the people
Mhm.
on the street, the shops that are open during the day, the shops that are closed at night, right? These are very
Yeah.
physical things. Whereas
Right.
uh, now we're getting more and more, even we have the cross platform generation where we've had, okay, we started with paper maps, and now we have Google Maps. Whereas the next generation is only going to have Google Maps or only used to
Uh-huh.
Google Maps. Like, okay, we can start using this. How do we use their tools to their benefit? Okay, hey kid, get us there on
Yeah.
low priority calls. Something that's a non-emergency. Why don't you get us there? Show us what
That
you got,
was a
and then can
challenge
you
that
see anything else on your map?
right.
Right,
That
that
was
you
a
don't
challenge
see.
I never overcame as a company officer, was getting guys to go back to rote memory of at least
Yeah.
their running district.
But
I couldn't get their brains to compute it.
and the
Um,
downside of that, which only recently that affected us, one day so far at the entire time of work there, where cell technology broke down. We actually had a blackout, cellular blackout. So you had no cell technology. So now you don't have maps,
Absolutely.
unless you've downloaded those maps.
That's what
But
I tried to convey to them for years.
right,
And
can it happen? We just
yeah,
proved it could happen once
yep.
out of 9 years.
Uh-huh.
But nevertheless,
Right.
it still could happen. So
Mhm.
how much you want to rely on that technology, always with the GPS, always with the whatever, should still be paying attention to things. So
Yeah,
blend
that was
them
definitely
together.
a formative lesson I had when I was a rookie. It was drilled into me, know your running district. And so often as a company officer, we would do a posted incident review or after action report. And somebody would say, how'd you know to park your rig over here? And I said,
Yeah.
because I knew this business and I knew this alley's got a dead end. And
Yeah, this
if
old veterinarian used to be there, which is where he took
yeah,
my
and this
dogs,
ladder was
and
going to come from this direction, so they would need the alpha side. But if I came up the delta side, I would have access to the alley because you can't get it from the other way.
So
right.
Yeah,
let me ask you a point. I got two notes just on this conversation, what we're talking about right now. You grew up in the town that you lived in, so you kind of had cardinal knowledge from growing up there. I mean, I grew up in the same town that I work in, so I've seen the changeover in our fire district from the time I can remember. That definitely has benefited you. Is Dearborn hiring people that have not grown up in Dearborn?
yes, I would
And
say
yeah,
of the last couple of years, we've hired 3 young men that are residents and grew up here. Outside of that, probably 0 of the last 40 lived anywhere near here. Sometimes they used to live a full county away and drive an hour to get to work.
yeah.
Um,
I
so
mean, Matt,
that's a common thing.
how many do you think have never lived in the town or even a bordering town?
We're getting up their number. I don't think it's quite half, but we're starting to get there. So that's we're just rolling exactly what you're saying though, but we're adding that in, knowing that they're not from town. So we want them to actually visually see on every call what these roads look like, how they
Yes,
connect. And it's
exactly.
funny enough, you said cardinal directions. That's perfect because that's always. I just interject it in random conversations. Hey, can you do me a favor? Which way is north? And you'll see them. And it's the old Homer Simpson when he goes to swing a home run and he points to the right and then he hits the ball and the ball goes left. And then he just points to the right and then shifts his arm to the left. Right. Right. So they'll point one way and be like, not even close. Like what's your cardinal directions during the day? It's easy, especially right now in the wintertime. Sun sets, crosses
It's
the
not even
southern
that.
edge.
In our area, Lake Ontario is to the north, and if you don't know where Lake Ontario
And the river's
is,
down the middle, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our city, it's a bedroom community with a very heavy industrial and then a good amount of main road taxpayer style businesses and strip malls. And so for the most part, if you're going north and south, you got a 4-digit address. If you're going east and west, you got a 5-digit address.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That helps a little bit, but it's surprisingly still hard to get the young guys to believe why it's important to know when you're like on a medical run, you're going by yourself. I mean, you got to go around the block, but so often at fires, it makes a difference to where you're staging your rig so you don't bottleneck the other rigs that are coming in. In fact, I sent you some video earlier. I was first due at a fire in another district, but it was right on the border. But we beat the lead engine there and made a grab. Actually, he had a guy confirmed he was in. Police said they could hear his voice. They can't hear him anymore. So we went in ahead of the hose line and were able to find a guy and get him out. And it was terrible. Of course, he's a hoarder. And of course, he was 400 pounds. And of course, he was naked. But nonetheless, as we're driving there, I tell my driver, and it was the oatmeal guy from the story at the beginning. And I said, are we thinking about coming in off Snow Street? I wonder where the ladder's going to come from. And he goes, yeah, we're definitely coming off Snow. It's going to be 3 houses off of Ash. And I said, about 3 houses? He goes, yeah, I dated a girl and she lived in this address, and it's only a few numbers away. It's got to be right here.
We like to call these
for no other
landmarks.
reason. Yeah. And just for no other reason, he had a friend that lived on that block. He remembered it 25 years later, and he applied it in the moment. We got there first, and we made a difference, and we pulled a human being out of a fire because we knew exactly where to go. I was able to radio to the ladder truck, come in off this street because it's going to dead end over there, and you're not going to have a pathway. And it was all because my driver is just a heads up fireman.
Matt brought up when we had transitioned to digital maps, and I would vehemently.
I was livid.
Might not be as strong. Not
I
the
like
strong
my box book.
Yeah, because a lot of guys printed up their own box books.
Spent a lot of time on that.
And then we would have our own notes on our first due and our own notes on our second due. I even had box maps for our mutual aid departments that we were running with notes. Yeah. And now it's been taken. I don't even have room in the rig for my box book. There's nowhere to put it. And now I'm relying on it all up in my brain.
I would, unless I heard the story, I would have not known what the term box book meant. It's just something we don't deal with here. But it's fascinating. You're right. One, you're putting the work in yourself to make this book. One, because the information is applicable to the job. But 2, you care enough to want to have it at your fingertips. And that's just what makes the fire service so great is you get people buying in.
And it was almost kind of it was almost a rite of passage here that you wouldn't get handed down somebody else's box book, but you would seek out someone's box book that had good notes in it and be like, hey, can I get your box book? And you'd go to the copy machine and photocopy it. Then you would have all their notes, and then you could add your notes into it. And that all got ripped away from us when we went digital.
So it's funny. I was going to bring up the box book because I liked that process, that learning process where you have to pay attention to the streets, right? And it was your guy, it's not a lieutenant on the other rig. You had to actually go out there and physically put your feet on these streets and know how they connect, and the larger buildings for the commercial structures and everything. There was another set of pages in there and everything for specifically the pre-plans for commercial structures. So you had to go in there, you got the wheel out, and you had to go run it in how many feet from the back door all the way into the cafeteria in business A, and you had to figure that out. So you knew your hose stretch, and everybody had to go through this. So now you're doing your pre-plan because you're in and out of the same building 100 times, right? You're on these same streets 100 times, and you're coming in multiple ways so that you get used to that same building coming in from different avenues, right? The streets that are so small, they don't really have a name populated on the map itself. Well, you got to know that very intimately, right? I can't remember all of them offhand now because it's been so many years, but the point of using what they are good, this generation's good at, is now all this stuff is digitized, and it's not like it's a PDF that's uploaded to a file. We use a software where all of that's in there and you add it in. So now we get to use their skill set with technology and apply that, use them to be able to update our pre-plans, update some of these run procedures and everything. So when we go on pre-plans, for example, it's, hey kid, grab the iPad or your phone and open up the app and let's click this, make sure you put the note in, boom, boom, boom. Now you're utilizing their skill set.
Yeah,
we're still doing the pre-plan.
Yeah, our department has been talking about digitizing the pre-plans for 30 years. It's still in a 3-ring binder on the rig.
Yeah, we invested
doesn't run out
money
of
into
battery.
yeah, it always works.
Always works.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a lot of times I get you get questioned. It's like, how do you know this? It's like, well,
Because you
15,
put the
20
work
years
in.
ago.
That's how
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I put the work in, and I jot it down, and luckily I have one. I don't know if it's always like this, but usually it's been proven. Like if you read something, you retain it like 20% of the time. If you read it and write it, you retain it a little bit more. If you read it, write, and do it, you keep the level of retention keeps going up the more hands-on you do it. Just like you hit on with your parent, the EMT class you talked about, and the retention of some of the information that we had, that some of the older generation that had these box books
Sure.
have of our district, it's light years ahead of what the younger generation has. And that's one of the things I struggle with right now, is getting our younger guys to memorize where they need to go.
Yeah, I would give them a list of streets. I said, hey, just this neighborhood, it follows a grid, and here's a pattern. Can you just memorize these 7 names in this order? Because there's not a lot of good street lights, and a lot of the times when we're going, you're going to have to know that Palmer's the 2nd street. So you're going to just count 2 and turn right. And I would give them a list of 7, and they would say, yeah, I don't have it down yet. And then 4 days will go by later. Yeah, I'm still working on it. But some people could get it. And then I realized that, they're just not used to rote memorization. It's just not a skill set that they have developed yet.
Yeah, because our calls come in on the phone on the phones, and there's also a monitor that the calls come in at the firehouse, and it shows a Google map of exactly where it is.
Yep.
So you see guys walking out to the rig looking at their phones.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I got to take a left here, left here, left here,
Yep.
and just because they see it on their phones and they set their phones down to drive the rig,
yes,
they don't remember where they're going.
Sure.
And
right. And to touch base on what you said just a couple of minutes ago, about just the effort it takes to get this knowledge of your district, not only the streets and the numbers, but the pre-plan. It reminded me of a story I was trying to talk to some of the young guys about. We have a really, really good ladder company officer named Ken. And I saw a young guy that asked him, hey, when we were at that fire, you went over the roof to the other side. There was this gable, and you cut a vent hole over here. And then we found out afterwards that this gable had a fire stop, and it was going to divert the smoke into this direction. How did you know that this roof construction was like that? And then there's this other really super smart, the smartest guy we have on our job he's a captain named Brian. And somebody was given a cardiac drug, and he goes, I'm looking at his prescriptions. He might be on something similar to that. Let's give a different antiarrhythmic. And after the call, he said, how did you know what the preconditions were for his cardiac history and all the physician desk reference info and all the pharmacology? The fire that I was in the flashover with the schizophrenic guy, my partner saw the smoke turn black. I started yelling the word ow over and over again. And I said, all right, we got to go. And then he knew to start cooling the ceiling. I said, hey, cool the ceiling as we're crawling out. We're right by the door, and all of a sudden the smoke then just turns orange as we're almost at the door. And he goes, no, I'm already doing it. And he's got the hose over his shoulder. He's hitting the ceiling as we're going. And somebody asked him afterwards, how did you know how to hit the ceiling exactly at the right time? The answer to all of those questions is what you said, Lou. It's because those people put the work in. It's the same answer every time.
Yeah, I can't agree with you anymore.
Yeah, you could be as good at this job as you want to be. It just takes dedication.
I want 100%. I'm lucky. He's not a probie anymore, but he's my junior guy. All he wants to do is learn. Good. And sometimes I feel like I sell him short because it's like I'm running out of stuff to.
Yeah. Right.
But it's a good problem.
It's a great problem to have, for sure. And people like that are an asset.
100%. 100%.
Does your department hire a lot of people that are mostly younger people newer to the fire service, or does your area have a lot of comparable sized departments where you're in a shared state pension and have lateral pay?
It's kind of, so we're, I would say it's about 50-50 right now. So
Oh,
it's not so much we're
we're like
taking
90-10.
ladder. So we've
90% new guys.
yeah, we're about 50% never any fire experience.
Gotcha.
50% some sort of fire, and the some sort of fire experience is mostly a volunteer in another department.
I see. Yeah, we have that. Where a lot of our younger guys are volunteer in a smaller community, private ambulance, maybe was on a department for only 6 months. But we now went to a shared state pension and lateral pay. So now we're getting people that will have, but that's the difference with our department is we're the bigger, way more secure in terms of job security, even though our pay is generally equitable throughout Wayne County. But we're very, very high in staffing. You're never getting laid off here. And so we're now starting to get people leaving other departments with 8 to 10 years on to come here. Whereas that happened occasionally in the past, but not a lot. And those are we're bringing great people with great practical skill sets, but it's also a different learning thing. And it's also different management technique too, because I can't treat them like I treat the 18-year-old.
Yep. So we've taken, we had a department have east of us in another county go through a lot of layoffs, and we took 3 of them.
Okay.
And then we actually had a department in the same county dissolve, and they got rid of everybody.
Yep.
And we were able to take on 3.
Okay.
2 or 3.
Oh, yep. 3 from that fire department. So if we're getting, most of the time, if we're getting a transfer, we're getting a transfer because they don't have a job anymore.
I see.
And the state recognizes it as a transfer because of the break-in service is less than, I think it's 6 months in New York.
Yeah. In our area of Michigan, I've only known of one department that just flat out dissolved, and their neighboring community took them over on a contract basis. The problem was they hired them in. Everybody could hire back in with the newer department, but they couldn't take all of them. So there were going to be some layoffs, and the ones they did take all had to do probation all over again, even if you had 27 years on. And so when we merged with another department, we fully zippered in seniority because we didn't want to have that 2-tier system and that dissension you get in the ranks.
They come in at a higher step, and I believe they come in on a shortened probationary period still. Gotcha. Instead of a full year, I think it's 6 months for transfer.
Yeah. Our latest labor contract has the lateral pay. So that is now a new thing for us.
Yeah. They come in at was it the first step, Matt? Or
it depends on what they're leaving their department with. So if they're at, some departments will have 7 years max out, some will have 5 for top pay at their salary step. And there's a rubric to figure that out. But if you're halfway through yours, you come in at halfway of ours, so it's sort of comparable. So you're not starting all over. Because before we got that in our contract, we did have guys that had 10 years on, they're at full pay at their old department, actually same department. And then when they came in, they had to start all over. So they're at bottom pay. We've had a couple guys that got hit with that. So we decided we're going to, we really pushed for that in a contract to, I guess you can call it lateral pay. So it's, if you were at 3, if your max was 5 and we're at max at 5, you were at 3, you come in at the third step. Whatever our pay rate is at third step, that's what you get. So that it balances it out a little bit. Actually, not a little bit, quite a bit.
If the lateral pay is a new thing for us, we didn't have that before. And I just really wonder, going forward, are those going to be leadership challenges? Because now they've learned a certain way.
I would say it's a loaded question. No. Yeah. That's a loaded question right there.
I guess it's more than likely just a case by case basis or a personal basis.
So the 3 guys that we took they're all fairly new to their home agency anyways.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I would say the ones that we took from years prior, I mean, they're awesome firemen, but for a while it was they brought over their mentality from their department. And I made a comment, and I love this dude dearly. He's a good friend of mine. He helped me out with a lot of stuff in my house. And I looked at him and I said, dude, do you ever wonder why you got laid off from your department with all the problems you're bringing up? But now looking at a lot of the problems he talked about were some of the issues we probably should have fought in the contract about. But it's a story for a different podcast, different time. But
I do have a quick example. So one of the things that they did at that department's a little bit more, well, it's not rural, but they have a lot of attributes about them where their practices are more rural. So when it comes to like our new guy, he came in and he automatically, for stabilization, he just kept going to the farm jack. Would you put that fucking thing away? You know, that's like a last ditch effort. It's a very specific tool to use on a very specific thing.
What does it do?
A farm jack?
Yes.
It's literally, it's like a post that just jacks up and there's 2 fingers. So
okay, gotcha.
You can grab a bottom of a vehicle and lift up. But the higher you go, the more unstable it becomes.
Yes.
Like you'll see them mounted.
Okay.
Jeep. You see it on Jeeps the mostly. Jeep users usually have them on the side. They're super dangerous. It's about the equivalent of having a manual version of a hydraulic tool, if you will, and you're taking spreaders and you're lifting the vehicle with spreaders. And you always see those collapse.
Absolutely.
That's what it has the high potential to do. So it's like, we're not stabilizing a vehicle with that. That's something, if we got to make a quick little short lift, that's it. But like he defaulted that twice in like the first couple of weeks he was here. And I'm like, all right, this is a habit. Now it's something we just have to work out of him. That was it. It's not a bad thing. I'm glad he likes it because I hate the thing. And Cap, I know you love it too, but I hate that thing.
Saved 2 kids.
It did save 2 kids. But if not,
they're all interesting leadership challenges, but they're things that we got to be willing to face.
Yeah. But it goes back to breaking. It's not a bad habit. It's just that's the way his department did it, and it's not the way our department operates. And we just have, and the biggest thing is telling them why we operate the way we operate compared to why your former department operated that way.
It may have been applicable there and here, and that's just a tool. So you're kind of going more of how do we. You have a regimen to train somebody from beginning steps all the way through advanced steps. And we kind of have that down pretty pat, but now you have somebody who's halfway through their process somewhere else and they're coming back over. You have to undo what's being done and redo new stuff. And sometimes you're competing theories, if you will, from an officer's perspective or an instructor's perspective.
Luckily 2 of the 3 that we just took on went through our fire academy that we run in county. So they had a lot of our tactics and nuances that we do in our county. And it was a smoother transition, I would say, compared to the other individuals that have been transferred over.
Yep, absolutely.
So to help with that, and Lou, you're going to love this part, we actually do have probationary books. So we have one designed for brand new people, and we have one designed for transfers. So it doesn't really matter where you come in. They're very similar, but there's different time constraints on them. And one's a little bit more rigorous for the newer people. But that way we have documentation to say that we're going through these processes. So it's standardizing the training regimen to make sure that they're up to date with our practices. But it also is consistent enough that it can be passed from officer to officer or instructor to instructor. It doesn't matter what group, what day, it doesn't matter. So it's all standard. You're not learning 12 different ways because you have, 4 groups of 3 or whatever it is, 16 different ways because you have 4 groups of 4. It should be all the same. So, and then on the other side of that, we can prove that the work's being done or prove that this just ain't working out. And it's, as you put in your book, you have that documentation. It's not to belittle. It's not to harm them in any way. It's to make sure we're following a standard procedure so that we're guaranteeing them the best of our abilities to them so that they can be the best person possible.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, we have documentation to say that. So nobody's left holding the bag going, oh yeah, it's been a shitheel the whole time. get rid of them. And they're like, well, where's the document? How do I get rid of somebody like that? Civil service, it's tough to do, especially in New York State. Volunteer thing, it's the same thing. Even for the volunteers, you should be having documentation to go, I'm proving that this person is competent. That's the key term. It's not that the boxes are checked, it's competency test.
Right, because if somebody's making mistakes, it can go two ways. You document it, sit the person down, and deal with it early. Most of the time, the employee respects you for having the courage to talk to them man to man and tell it to them straight. And then they might even feel a little embarrassed that they have been deficient, and they'll put in the work and they'll get better. And if the person doesn't respond, it like you said, Matt, it now provides you the chance to go back and document it a second time. So then if a real egregious thing happens, and we've had this at our department, we're on issue number 4, and this time it's so egregious it could affect this man's partner who was completely innocent. But we've now given him the liability of being with a person who is failing. And then they went to discipline him and just said, well, this is his first offense. What are you talking about? He's had like 5 screw-ups before. I'm looking at his evals, and they're all good. I don't know what you're talking about. And so then they realized, oh, yikes. Well, yeah, we need to document these things. So it's a twofold thing. You can't advance it if you don't document it. And 2, if you don't have those hard conversations, the people don't get the opportunity to learn. And so you're just not giving them the respect either.
True. And if you phrase it the right way in private, right? If you really need a behavioral change and you do it in private, you just word it in a way that it doesn't sound like, hey, you're failing. You don't, right? I'm not saying softball it, but if you word it the correct way, you're saying, I see an area of improvement. And in order, you really want the A on this thing for me to sign this off. I could sign you off today. It's a passing, it's competent, right? It's kind of a low bar, but look, out of our house, we don't do just bare minimum.
Gotcha.
Right. We want you to have a little bit more. I want to put an A in my name on this thing and say, yeah, this guy's kick ass. So how about you? What do you think if we do this one more time, or we give this, we'll go about it a different way and see if it works better for you. Right. Now they go, oh yeah, you know what? All right, let's go do it again. Right. You give them a boost, but you're still affecting that behavioral change, which is the whole point of it for their learning's sake.
Absolutely.
Instead of shutting them down.
Right. And let's say the person's not on probation and they have been dropping the ball a little bit. Rather than jumping to severe discipline and creating what we talked about at the beginning, where now people are just afraid their whole career, I'll have that informal talk. And I found so many times just telling somebody, you haven't been yourself lately. I know you're better than this. Talk to me about what's going on. And usually I'll find an issue that's addressable. Stress at home, personal conflict with a partner, whatever it might be. But now I've got it. And then he knows that I know, and he now has the respect of being talked to man to man. And so even if they're not on probation, in the fire service, we have that ability to just communicate with people face to face, and I think affect better change than constant correction action forms and HR type disciplines you see in the corporate world.
Yeah, and now it doesn't fit for everybody. You're still going to there's still some people out there that you're on the 100th turn for the 10th. You've tried every other way, and it is what it is.
And having that talk with somebody might just lift the weight off their shoulders and get them out of their funk.
That's a good point. Yeah. It takes the pressure off of them that they now don't have to carry this secret.
Right. They're burdening this own weight themselves, and they've let it out. And now it's like, okay, I've let it out.
Sure.
Now I can deal with it. I can go about my business, and I can focus on what I need to focus on.
Yep. Yeah. I think my department is outside of probationary people that we just didn't pass their probation and because they weren't a sworn member at that point. I think we've probably only terminated 2 people since I've been on the job, maybe 3. It doesn't happen that often. You really got to mess up. And most of the times If you're present as an officer, you're catching these things when they're little. And then you have plenty of opportunities to deal with it, rather than you hang in your office all day or your private room all day, and you all of a sudden only hear about something when it's terribly egregious.
Yeah, it's the saying. Do you really want a 20-year problem that you could have got rid of? Not got rid of, like terminated, but handled within the first 6 or 7 months of their employment.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen that too many times, where there's a bad habit and all of a sudden guys got year 21 on, and we just say, shoot, all right, let's just wait 5 more years and they'll retire.
Yeah. And firemen are a big investment for any department. Making good money with their benefits packages and their pensions. It's you want your return on investment. You want your ROI in your personnel. You don't want to look at them as a dollar sense, but it really is not just in dollars for the department budget, but just as a whole, what they're going to give back to the members, what they're going to give to the junior members, what are they going to bring to the company? If you have a shit bag and you've never corrected it, that's going to sour your portfolio. And I'm not an investor. I don't know anything about the stock market. I got friends that are way more smarter than me. But if you have one bad investment, you could ruin your whole career.
Right. And I've just seen a couple of times where people were struggling with an issue, struggling with something, and maybe we should have encouraged them to just look for another career by year 5. And nobody had that tough conversation with this person. And now once they got year 10 on, now everybody feels bad for them. And all right, well, maybe if they could just drive the fire truck, we'll put them at a slow station. And we're just going to wait it out at this point.
And then they promote.
Yeah. And we have had that before too. I would say that's happened way more before I hired on. There were 1 or 2 holdovers of just really old school 60s, 70s era labor union-ish senior people that just assumed it was their birthright to just ride it out for their last 5, 6, 7 years because, quote, they did their time. We don't really see a lot of that anymore. But yeah, when I came on, there were a number of employees that could barely work their fire truck, wouldn't have been able to diagnose a problem with the pump or with the water supply if anything went wrong. And they were just allowed to hang on because the fire service was just fires back then. And I don't know, there was just such a, the union will protect you type mentality that people just thought it was their right to just coast.
I got to imagine the union in Michigan is a juggernaut compared
it is,
to.
Yes, we are very fortunate, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
So going along with this, so we're talking treating people fairly, right? I know you got the union hat on, we got the volunteer side. Everything is about how an officer can treat people fairly. You have a quote, you started this section out, treat everyone fairly, but you don't always have to treat them equally, by Coach Jimmy Johnson. I think that's great because you can set expectations. Expectation is for everybody. Mm-hmm. All right. And whether that's we set the expectation for them, and sometimes, as Lewis said it previously, sometimes we ask them, hey, what's the expectation of us? What are you looking to get out of this so we can meet your expectation as well? But a heavier emphasis on here's what we expect. And by we, I don't mean just the guys getting around at the station. Yeah, we expect you to be on this time or make this type of coffee. It's not like that, right? It's the expectations of the job.
Yes.
All right. And how we're going to meet the goals to get you there. All right. Whether that's a new person, it's a whole crew, or it's a senior guy, right? You set those expectations. Now, treating people fairly is whatever level of an individual it takes, right? Mm-hmm. If I got one person slacking and one person is just a rock star, the fair treatment is I might be a little bit more critical of the one that's slacking
Yes.
so that they can meet the expectation. That's fairness. And everybody always thinks that fair and equal mean the same exact thing.
Sure. And Jimmy Johnson was referring to Troy Aikman. He said, I get a guy in my special teams that is late for a couple of meetings. He's going to be running laps at every single practice. But if Troy Aikman's late for one meeting, I would let it go because he's Troy Aikman. He's got 10 years on. He's more likely going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's already got 2 Super Bowl rings, and he's been a team player and on time forever. He's allowed that the occasional lapse because he's earned a privilege throughout the team. And so we do see that in the fire service, but you're right. It absolutely comes down to expectations. Like Lou was saying, arriving at a fire and you've got different riding assignments. That doesn't come easy. What you mentioned with Dave Nowacki, the symphony of a fireground, that is weeks to months to years in the making of hard work as a boss, laying out expectations and then following up with the training. You can't just come out of your office and just say, hey, I want everybody to be able to put your pack on in 30 seconds and we're all going to charge into this house fire the next time we get a fire. And then you go back in your room and not pay attention to things. It's constant presence and management and effort.
Yeah. So it's the expectations and treating fairly for them, but it's also for yourself. And if you're not meeting your own expectations or the group's expectation, you're not going to get any emphasis from, especially the ones that are receiving the more harsh criticism.
Right.
On the career side, recently within the last year, had some words at their request. They wanted some feedback, and it was too soon for that feedback. And I gave some harsh criticism. They were displeased with that. Very severely displeased. And the reason I gave that criticism, one, they asked, so point blank, you asked, you're going to get a direct question. And I formed it as such. Do you understand that it's not time for that yet? You're still not there. Yeah, no, I really do. They didn't like it. Well, you asked for it. And what I'm summing up is you didn't meet the expectations. You're not meeting the expectations. So I expect a little bit more effort out of you. Right. Or I know I'm using the definition in the phrase or the phrase in the definition, but you need to work a little bit harder. All right.
Mm-hmm.
On the volunteer side, when I was doing the volunteer thing simultaneously, we had a member that just was not meeting the expectations. So they felt they were being punished constantly. No, you're not being punished. You're just not hitting passing grades. So you're not progressing. And they didn't like that nobody was progressing them onto being a full interior qualifier, whatever the qualification was at the time. They weren't given the full blessing to be a full-blown firefighter. And they left. And on the way out the door, they gave this big, saying, it's because they're picking on me. All this other stuff. No, the standard's there. Everybody's meeting the standard. We are all hitting the standard, that expectation. You're not. Volunteer, it's a little bit hard. I understand. It's maybe it's drills once a week, once a month, whatever your tempo is. But you have to hit those expectations. No different than career staff. Different is we just sometimes on the career side we get a little bit more tempo to do stuff. So it looks like and it's fast paced or it's happening.
And when you talk about having the volunteer being upset when he left, it's a little unfortunate a person had to take that stance, because I'm assuming by just getting to know you that this wasn't the first conversation. This was a series of coaching sessions and mentoring sessions where he had been told. In fact, I have seen this a couple of times in the corporate world where somebody's not favored or boss wants to promote somebody else on the team. They'll hold a quarterly review and then they'll say, yeah, you're not doing this and this. And they'll say, well, I didn't know you wanted me to do that and that. Well, yeah,
we had the documentation.
And so they're like sandbagging people. And I've seen that once in my department. The guy's putting in for lieutenant and he's told in his promotional interview, hey, your boss says you're not doing this. I don't know, he never asked me to do that. And so I see the evaluation we do monthly for probates and we do quarterly for people that are writing for lieutenant, though those evals have to be a continuation of the daily communication. So when I do the eval, it's only confirming what this person's already known. I don't want to hold stuff in secret and then hit them with it later. Because what if it's an informal talk and then by the end of 28 days, they've turned it around? I won't even bother putting it in.
Bingo.
But like you said, I find it hard to believe that volunteer was shocked by any of this.
Yeah, it was what it was. But so then on the flip side of that, you do have to maintain motivation for those who are meeting or exceeding the expectations as well. And part of that fairness is it's fair to not ride them as hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So long as they're still meeting that, right. Don't let them demotivate. Don't give them too much slack to the point you're like, okay, I can slack off now. No. The point was you're killing it out there. Keep killing it. So you're getting a little bit of a reward, but you give them too much space, they might demotivate. And all of a sudden they drop down to the bottom. And on the other side of that too, especially the ones that feel a little bit more, we'll say, scorned because you gave them what they would perceive as a negative criticism for their benefit. When they do something positive, sometimes you got to go out of your way to make sure you also give them the carrot, right? So that they remotivate as well. So they don't always feel the negative criticism that they're perceiving. They're also getting the attaboys when they do truly deserve it. And
right. Yeah. Attaboys
are
people. Such an effective thing in the fire service.
Yeah. And usually it's when it's in front of their peers. I'd say definitely my generation below want to feel that. I could care either way, but if you give them that attaboy in front of their peers, that magnifies it. You have a force multiplier on it for one little thing. Hey, you guys rock today, and you specifically, fucking, that was perfect this time. Keep it up.
Absolutely, it helps.
They're out of their funk. It knocks them right out.
Yeah.
6 foot hole, they're back up on top.
Sure.
Personal experience that happened to me with the fairness thing. This goes back years when I was still a fireman. It was New Year's Eve, so we're coming up on the anniversary of this occurring. Or actually New Year's Day. I'm laying in bed. It's 7:30 in the morning, hungover from partying all night when I was younger. And I get a phone. I was supposed to work. I wasn't supposed to work New Year's Day because I submitted the paperwork in, but the paperwork got mishandled and I shouldn't blame the retiring lieutenant because I should have double checked. My fault for not double checking that the time off paperwork was put in this back when we still had paper time offs, and there was really a tough way to have a paper trail. So I'm laying in bed, hungover. I get a phone call from my captain saying, "Hey, coming into work today?" And I was just like, "No." He's like, "What do you mean no?" I was like, "I got the day off today." He goes, "I've looked for your time off paper. There's no time off. There's nothing in here." I said, "Cap, I submitted that time off 1 year ago to so-and-so who then since retired." I don't know what he did with that paperwork. He goes, "Well, there's no paperwork in here. How fast can you get into work?" I said, "Let me shower, get my thoughts together, and I'll be in as soon as I can." He's like, "All right, get in as soon as you can." Now, he could have very well ripped me up, but we were brought up at the time when we were still on 10s and 14s. Relief time in the morning was 6 a.m. Relief time in the afternoon was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was always there at 6 a.m. I still have not used a sick day. The only sick day I had is when I had foot surgery because I broke my foot. And, my wife was during COVID when she needed me home for sick kids and stuff like that. I've never blown in because I've been sick. So I'm not that type of employee. He could have very well ripped me up. He pulled me in the office. He goes, "There is no paperwork." He goes, "Make sure there's paperwork next time, or this is going to go farther than what it needs to go to. Just copy that. Won't ever happen again." That was the end of that. Senior guy in my group at the time he had the old 20 years of experience or 20 years on the job with 1 day of experience. Terrible relief. Use sick time as vacation. You name it. That's what he did. He came in 10 minutes late, never called, never did, just strutted in. He gets written up because that was he didn't have the capital for the company officer at the time to withdraw from that capital, say, hey, look,
Yeah.
I understand, you're late. Next time, call, whatever you got to do, have someone hold over. No, he got written up immediately, where I was an hour and a half late. And I told the captain, I'm you coming in? I said, no, I'm not coming in.
Sure.
And it was treated different. It was fair. It was fair
Right.
for the different personnel.
Yeah.
Wasn't equal. It was fair. And that's how you have to do
our
it, guys.
department, our city is very inflexible with their time off. Their banked time is sacrosanct and it can never be flexed. Every hour has to add up at the end of the year. So if somebody has a major medical issue and they need 12 months off, or they get a sick kid who is going through some treatments and he's going to need 9 months off, and then they don't have enough banked time, the city will not give him a minute, but we can donate to them out of our bank. So you'd sign a form and then everybody will give him 4 hours. And at the end of it, that he's going to burn his sick time. And then that'll buy him the last 2 months.
Yeah.
And then we had somebody who's Mr. Earn a Day, Burn a Day, calling in sick every holiday, using sick time as vacation time, posting on Facebook and in Punta Cana, and then calling in sick and then making us all look bad. And then he breaks his femur and then nobody wants to donate. And and it wasn't an administrative thing. This was a union brother thing. But because somebody had earned it and somebody had not.
Exactly. You build capital in everything you do.
That's a great word, building capital.
Actually, as you alluded to, so we use that, we throw that term around a lot, and you allude to it in your book. It's a Jocko thing. Yeah. Jocko Willink does a fantastic bit about your leadership capital and how you expend it, and it's way easier to spend it than it is to make it.
Oh yeah.
So use it wisely.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
all, even doesn't matter what level you're at, we all fall in the pitfalls of burning it quickly too. You don't stop learning these traits and these characteristics.
Sure. Lou, you had mentioned at the beginning that you are a wrestling coach, and Matt was asking you about the challenges of coaching young athletes. And speaking of capital, and this is what's nice about leadership training now, is so many people are getting involved in it that are not just corporate CEOs. And somebody I've seen give leadership speeches is Alabama coach Nick Saban. And somebody asked him once about spending that capital. And they said, well, yeah, but can't you just go in at halftime and scream and yell at the kids and flip over the Gatorade table and get their attention? And he says, yeah, I can do that, but once a year. I do that one time. And if I ever did it again, I've lost them. So one time I could do the whole rah, 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 we're going to go win this for good old Alabama University. And I'm going to go kick a Gatorade bucket across the locker room and scream at them. But the other 10 games of the year, no, I have to talk to them like men, and I have to use that capital wisely. It was just such a fascinating look, because you would think, oh my God, the greatest college coach ever, he could just tear into these kids, and of course they're going to be scared to death and they're going to listen to him. And he goes, no, it's absolutely not the way it works.
Yeah, you can do it once and you'll get their attention. If you do it again, it's diluted at that point.
Absolutely.
And with this generation, you know what's going to happen? They just turn right off.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, coach is flying off the handle again. Let's think about whatever.
Well, if you actually apply it as fiscal, so money and everything, when you spend a little bit, your goal should be trying to spend just a little bit and gain the maximum return on investment. If I'm spending a little bit every single time, it's so used, your return each time is just also going to be a little. So when you compile it up, it's nothing. So the one time you have to spend it, bam, it hits hard, huge return on investment, everybody's in. If you have to get to that level, try not to raise the voice, but It happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yes, sometimes it gets people's attention if you got to raise your voice. You would hope that it doesn't become a thing. And we had a couple screamers when I came on. Every single fire, flying off the handle. I need 3 guys over here. No, I changed my mind. I want you over there. Wait, get a ladder over here. No, that's the wrong ladder. I want the other ladder. And it's just this hectic, constant yelling. And I quickly realized it was a defense mechanism because they were insecure of their own leadership abilities, their own tactical decisions that they were covering by just being loud.
So we're coming to the conclusion portion of your book. There's a lot we skipped over, and I didn't want to. I purposely did that by design.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in this book; it's fantastic. And as I'm reading through it, I can't help myself but to go, "Oh, I was in this position," or I hope to someday be in that position. Oh, I've gone through this pitfall. I hope to avoid this pitfall. And I'm doing this as I'm reading the book, right? And I come all the way to the end. The beginning sentence is you say, I'm lucky to have worked with some horrible bosses, paraphrasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've had some horrible bosses and I don't want to be like them. And the last line that you have is Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike your enemies. So you wrap that up. You connected both ends of that, and everything in between was definitely your learning lessons, your takes that you've developed as you learn those lessons, and then the guidance that you're doling out, but also with your experiences of your downturns.
I tried to, and I tried to make sure to include my own leadership failures.
Yeah. So there's you kind of have two things going on throughout the whole book that and again, this is my perspective as just a reader of this book. You have a motif and a thesis, and those are two different things. They can be similar. Your motif is just kind of like the theme of it. The notes that I put under this thing, I made 2 columns. You got to be, as a leader, you got to be for the men and the citizens at all times. And this is across the board. Volunteer, career, part-time, laborer, doesn't matter. EMS, if you're EMS only, it does not matter. Everything that you do, your actions better be in the sake of the citizens first and the men that are serving those citizens. And you have full responsibility. Man, what a huge, even if you're just a boss of 2-3 guys, that's a huge undertaking. You can't, like you said, you can't pay enough money to do it.
Right.
But that's an awesome responsibility.
Right. And I've occasionally had this discussion with a citizen who was upset about how high their taxes are. And one of the first things I always go to, well, why do we pay all these firefighters to sit around and play cards all day? Well, one, we're not. Here's how many calls we're going on. And well, why do you guys got to make so much money? You sound like you got master's degrees. Well, okay, there's Ford Research and Engineering building they just built for $10 billion. They're moving all their all their research, engineering, AI, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicle development into this one campus. What's the value of protecting that to Ford, who's our biggest taxpayer? You mentioned this in a recent episode, just being there to help people when they need help. I can make the same argument. A call that you would normally think would be a nuisance, but it's some of the more rewarding stuff I've ever done. Somebody is dying of whatever disease, they're in hospice, or before they even get into that last stage of hospice, we just know, hey, this guy, he's going to fall down for the next month, but he doesn't want to go to a nursing home, and his wife can't pick him up. So for the next 30 days, guys, we're going to have to go there like every other day and pick this guy up. But you know what? We're there for them. And so whether it's a corporate interest or just legitimately just being there for another human being, it's such a sacred part of the job that it's rewarding on a lot of levels for us. So I've learned a lot about people that way, but I've also learned a lot about myself and the rewards you get from doing that kind of work and being present in those moments has meant a lot.
So you had, so then you kind of answered that. So for the men, for the citizens, in your writing, it was how do you wrap that all up by balancing of being present and not micromanaging your crews. Um, the last two items I had was, oh, you're always analyzing self and those whom you want to emulate, and I think that's a great thing. I think everybody should be kind of doing that as you build up who you want to be, who you don't want to be, and then put your own spin on it, your own funk. Um, and then you proved all that through your writing of saying you're willing to learn alongside them, not always having all of the answers, right? And Lou and I have talked about this a million times. I know my big thing is you have to have intelligence and knowledge, okay, and those things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other to be effective at anything. You can be the smartest guy in the world, but if you don't have the books to pull from, your intelligence is how to read the book and how to use that, right? The knowledge component is all the software, but if you don't know how to use the software, you're not getting anywhere, right? And if you're low on those or too much of them, the resourcefulness is the most, I think, leadership. What's the word I'm looking for? Like trait. I don't have to have all the answers. I just have to know how to get them and how to apply them. Most of the time, that's your people that are working with you, not for you, with you. We turn a phrase, just say, "Oh, I work for this boss, I work for that boss." No, you work for the fire district, you work for the city, you work for that. But list them all. I work with these people, and as a good boss, it's good to. I like the bosses that the ones that I emulate usually have that characteristic. Say like, "No, me and our guys." They don't say my guys only, or like sometimes we say it in turn of phrase, but it's not like they don't purposely mean like I own these people. No, they're saying it because they truly believe they're a part of that group at the same level. They're just the one that's responsible,
Right. And how
right? And
often
those
do you,
guys love them for it.
yeah, and how often, if your department does an award ceremony or your city hands out a certificate of appreciation, or you see a news story about a professional firefighter who is getting whatever accolade, and how many times do they say, um, I also have to thank the crew that I'm on because we're a team. And I hear that across the country.
Yeah. So this all boils down to just trusting your people, trust
For
them to do
sure.
the job, trust them that they're going to train,
Yep.
and trust them that to the point where you want to make them comfortable to come to you and say, Cap, Lieutenant, I don't know about this, right?
Sure.
And trust their instincts
Yeah.
and go, okay, I hear you. Let's try another avenue. Maybe
I,
you know it's wrong, but let's
yeah.
figure it out together, right? That's being resourceful.
That was a comment I've had on some of my helmet cam. Uh, I'll get to a scene and just say, hey, Danny, I see a lot of smoke coming out the upper. You see anything on the first floor? He goes, no, I think it's an upper fire. I said, got it. I'll meet you at the front door. I'm going to do a 360. And I'm touching base with him because I trust his
Right.
opinion. And so I've had a lot of people say, that's not my experiences in my department. And it's really a shame because so often, though, touching base with those guys, one, like Lou had said, it's getting them to buy in now. And it's me showing my trust in them. And two, I sometimes don't see everything, and they practically are providing me new information. And so it's got to be an open dialogue, and you have to trust them.
Yeah. There's a little forest through the trees or trees through the forest, whichever way this works for you. I'm terrible with phrases, but as I was reading this, it's in the text if you're reading it the correct way, and there's some shitty leaders out there, you don't want to emulate, and there's some greats out there that you want to emulate. But what's also the subtext in there is you need to reevaluate that periodically, because I've somebody who's now a boss at our department. I remember when they were firemen, I'm like, man, this guy's fucking rough, man. I hope I never have to work with him. Now they're a boss, and they were a wild child as a boss. They grew into their position. If I could have wrote them off, and now I'm like, fuck, man. Now they're one of the people that I want to be someday. I hope I can emulate some of their bits because they've grown. Everybody gets a chance to grow.
Yeah.
You can't just write them off. And this is a point of view from a black hatter. I'm a bottom guy. This is how I'm looking at the world. These are the people I want to see. I need to constantly reevaluate that, and that's trust your people. And I'm trusting my bosses. I'm trusting that they're going to self-evaluate, and I need to in turn self-evaluate as well. And then for the senior men that are out there listening to this, and this is both career and volunteer side, if you're looking to move up, take on an extra responsibility. So whether that's just being a senior guy or the next level of senior guy, or that is going up whatever the next promotable level is, even if that's a vote, doesn't matter. People are voting for you because they trust you, and you have a lot of experience that has shown that. Kind of keep going with that reassessing. Don't forget that if just because you want to write somebody off, a boss, right, and go, I don't want to work with that guy. I'm a senior guy. I get to, you know what? I'm going to put a transfer and I get to go over here. I get preference because I'm a senior guy. Man, the undertone of the entire book is about character and integrity. How you act when nobody's looking. And this is a big, big thing is, yeah, I could do that. I could shuffle off, go to a better group. I could go under a better boss. I can do whatever. But who's going to get stuck with that boss? Right. And if it ends up being a lower guy that needs more work, needs a lot of work, and I stuff him with that bad boss, and now maybe not on paper, but I'm definitely responsible for failing a fireman, coming up the pipe. That's on me. Nobody will ever know. Nobody's going to blame me. They're going to blame the boss. Oh, shitty boss. But when you get to that senior level, keep in mind, just because you're trying to avoid an immediate problem, you might be making a long-term problem for somebody who needs something different.
That's a really good point, and something I hadn't actually thought of, but you're right.
Well, you kind of did when you were talking about the gentleman, the arsonist.
Oh, that one, yes. Okay, now I see.
Not so bad there. It's not in the book, but I mean, it's definitely in the subtext within all throughout the pages as I'm reading it. That was like the first note that I put down.
Yeah, and it does make a lot of sense because it is something I brought up a lot. Is how you act when people aren't watching. I saw the benefit of that when I was growing up on the job. I saw the decisions that were made that weren't going to be noticed, and wanted to emulate that.
Yeah, you don't have to tell everybody goodwill. People can tell your goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps it up for the book.
Okay.
Anything we missed out?
I don't think so. It was a great conversation, and I got to learn a ton about the way you guys work in upstate New York.
Oh, I
enjoyed it.
We're crazy out here. We're crazy.
I'm assuming you're Bills fans too.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, all right, easy. I've been learning to like the Bills. It's hard to their stadium's a mile away from me.
The last time I went to a game, I took my son. Matt was kind enough to allow me to park in his driveway for free, and then I had the Matt Uber drop me and my son off at the stadium, save me about $80.
Well, it's better than being a Giants fan this year.
Oh yeah. My brother-in-law is a Giants fan. All my nephews are Giants fans. And it's I don't know. I would welcome Dable to the Bills any day of the week. Bring him on. Bring him over. Bring him back. Are you a Giants fan or a Detroit fan?
Detroit fan.
Okay. Yeah. Tammy.
So it's been fun the last couple of years. Finally got a good little run here.
You guys are just same position we're in, just waiting for that one.
Right.
Yeah. But it was a fun conversation.
Yes, it was.
Awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
So for everybody listening, book comes out December 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's still listening at this point. We always said this. Lou, actually, your wife always, I think that was the first person that commented, is like, you got to shorten this thing down. Like, no, you know what? Those that, the real ones want to, they want to listen or they want to be part of the conversation. And
absolutely.
I got a lot of friends that listen to this, that some are in the fire service, some are not, but they put it on a half hour at a time on their commute.
There you go.
And I think that's, sometimes it's embarrassing because I hate the way, I talk and my voice and all that stuff, and they make fun of me, but, it sparks a lot of conversation on the side, even through our text messages and stuff. So it's awesome. Yeah, I actually have learned quite a bit from doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But the book comes out December 22nd, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. What else?
I should be able to order it at bookstores. And then if I can get enough sales, I could get bookstores to stock it.
Okay. The title is Leading Through the Heat by Mark Andrew. Get your copy, reserve it, whatever you got to do. Maybe he'll sign a first edition for you.
I wouldn't mind at all.
Kindly. There you go. Lou, got anything to wrap up?
No,
that's it.
No, I'm good. I
All
need a
right.
shower.
Mark,
Gotcha.
anything else?
Not at all. It was a great conversation, John. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that
Thank
was
you
a
very
great
much for your
conversation.
time.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you for your years of service and sharing your
Enjoy
wisdom with us.
retirement.
Yep.
All right. Will do, guys.
All right, everybody. Stay safe.